Okay, we have a quorum. We have a quorum. Senator Gallion, are you ready to present the first bill? You're ready for the first bill of the day? And Senator Gallion is going to be in the one spot. Senator Hershey, you're in the two spot.
Thank you, sir.
But we're going to start with Senate Bill 850, and you are the lone witness on this piece of legislation, so why don't you proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, fellow committee members. For the record, Senator Jason Gallion, representing District 35, Hartford and Cecil counties, here to present SB 850, the Utility, Affordability, and Ratepayer Protection Act of 2026. At its core, SB 850 is about one simple principle. Maryland ratepayers deserve to see real, measurable savings on their monthly utility bills. The bill helps reduce short-term bill pressure by spreading the recovery of existing program costs over a longer time frame, which helps stabilize rates for Maryland ratepayers while improving transparency around legacy program balances. One other potential avenue I think we should look at, maybe as an alternative to doing that stretch out of payments, is looking at using the C fund to pay off the remaining balance of Empower, which could be done much more quickly and really give our ratepayers some immediate relief. The unfortunate situation that we are in right now is that the higher the bills our ratepayers pay are, the better the state does when it comes to receiving funds that go to the C fund. Colleagues, as we know, over the past few years, Maryland families and small businesses have experienced significant increases in their electric and gas bills. While we have made some progress addressing medium and long-term solutions, we must ensure that these investments translate into affordability, not just long-term policy goals, but tangible relief that our households can see every single month when they open their utility bill. SB 850 strengthens and refocuses our energy efficiency and demand response framework, including programs under Empower Maryland, and to guarantee that residential customers receive demonstrable bill savings. Now, I'd like to say Empower Maryland has long been a national model for energy efficiency. It has reduced energy consumption, lowered peak demand, and helped meet Maryland's environmental goals. However, as the program evolves, we must ensure that its success is measured not only in megawatt hours reduced or emissions avoided, but in dollars saved by Maryland families. This bill requires that utility programs funded through ratepayer assessments deliver clear, verifiable monthly savings to residential customers. It also directs the Public Service Commission to establish reasonable caps or limits on assessments charged to residential ratepayers. Marylanders should not be asked to shoulder escalating costs without corresponding and measurable financial benefit. SB 850 does not dismantle Empower Maryland. It reinforces the program's original purpose, helping customers reduce usage and reduce bills. Energy efficiency is one of the most powerful affordability tools we have, but only if it works for the people paying into it. For too many families and businesses, utility costs are now a major expense. Energy burden falls hardest on low and moderate income households and seniors on fixed incomes. If we are serious about affordability, we must ensure that every dollar collected from ratepayers produces real savings for those ratepayers. So, in summary, this legislation promotes four things: transparency in how savings are calculated, accountability for utility cost recovery, protection against unchecked growth in residential assessments, and a renewed focus on lowering monthly bills. Colleagues, you will see some opposition in your bill folder suggesting that this bill could create confusion or weaken efficiency programs. But the bill simply requires that programs funded by ratepayers deliver clear and measurable savings. Maryland families deserve transparency about what they're paying for and reasonable limits on how much can be charged on their utility bills. If these programs truly provide the long-term savings utilities claim, they should have no difficulty demonstrating those benefits. Finally, I would also welcome, I believe in PSC mentioned this in their letter of information, an amendment to apply these protections to commercial customers as well. so that all ratepayers funding these programs receive the same transparency and accountability. SB 850 sends a clear message. Ratepayer-funded programs must deliver ratepayer savings. I'd like to thank the 3 committee members who co-sponsored this legislation to make it a bipartisan bill, and I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 850.
Okay, thank you, Senator Gallion. Questions for Senator Gallion on Senate Bill 850? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 850. Thank you, Senator. Next up, we're going to take another bill relating to the Empower program, I believe, it's from Senator Hershey, and it says Hershey and Reedy, but we are on Senate Bill 834. Senator Hershey, take the time you need to present Senate Bill 834.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Steve Hershey to present Senate Bill 834. I'll keep this presentation a little bit brief, as you've had a number of bills that are looking at ways to reduce ratepayer bills immediately on the short-term goals. As we've seen last year through legislation that passed, there was a bill that talked about next generation on what we were looking at and how we might try to solve some of our energy problems on a longer-term basis. We've got some midterm solutions as well, too, that are looking at finding ways to reduce costs. But at the end of the day, our constituents, every one of our constituents, is feeling the impact of higher electricity prices. And a lot of them are based on policies that have been created here in the General Assembly. With respect to Empower, and what this bill simply does is pauses Empower to no longer go forward with additional spending, but just pay off the amortized cost. So essentially, Empower is looked at as a credit card. There have been expenditures that have taken place by the public utilities. This would say that they are certainly able to recover those costs, but we're just not going to go any further in asking ratepayers to pay into this fund. I think we've seen some information about what the monthly cost for Empower looks like. Information we have was at about, on average, $22 per month per electricity bill. This bill in itself, just by pausing it, would save $17 a month. So it'd be back to where a resident was only paying, or a bill payer was only paying $4. So that's a pretty substantial savings, especially when you've seen, the governor come up with a major piece of legislation that would look to save $40 over the course of a year. This would save $17 a month on average. And so that's why we think it's important to take a look at the policies that have been created. Empower was created in 2008. So for 18 years, we've had different policies. And yes, it may have reduced energy uses at the onset. It was known at one point as the light bulb program, right? Where if you went into Home Depot or something, you were able to buy a certain type of light bulb for a reduced cost because Empower, backfed that and was able to make those costs lower. We've gotten past the low-hanging fruit on Empower. And I think that's the important thing. As we look at a lot of the policies that we've created, I'm not going to say that they were not efficient or were not able to be effective when first started, but as you run these over time, you really have to reevaluate and see, are we still getting the savings and the cost efficiencies that we expected when the program was first initiated 18 years ago. So with that, again, I know that there's a number of bills addressing Empower that are going to be looked at this legislative session. I think that might see something from leadership as well regarding Empower. It might not go the exact same direction that each of these bills go, but I think it's important to recognize that we're all down here together to try to find some immediate short-term relief for ratepayers. And whether that comes from, Senator Gallion or myself or, somebody on our side of the aisle, or whether it comes from the chairman or the president or the speaker, I think that we all have to recognize that there is a solution somewhere around here that could provide immediate relief for ratepayers. And, whether it's this bill, Mr. Chairman, or a different bill or something like that, we certainly stand ready to be able to work with your committee on solutions to try to move something forward that would provide our ratepayers this type of assistance. So with that, I will just ask that either this bill be looked at favorably or certain, please include us in the conversations, include my colleagues here in the conversation on how we can find immediate short-term relief for ratepayers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hershey. Questions for Senator Hershey? Yes, Senator Caruso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hershey, thank you for the bill and explaining the impact on ratepayers. And I just wanted to better understand, you used the term in your presentation about pausing. So I was trying to get an idea of what examples of what would continue and what would actually be paused.
So under my bill, essentially pausing it, meaning going forward with no further programs. The pause would allow, and that's why it's actually called a moratorium for the usage of what bill drafters had said. But essentially it's saying that the electric, public utility companies can still recover the amortized cost, the ones that they've spent and done already, but would not be requiring any additional money coming from ratepayers. So pay off the debt, but go no further. Stop the credit card from being charged, but pay off the debt. And so that's what this bill would do.
And that's then where the reductions would come specifically for the ratepayers?
You'll see an immediate reduction because you're not paying into the program anymore. You're just paying off the debt. So, and that's why when we asked for some numbers on what we saw, it was a savings of about $17 a month in order to just pay the debt and no longer go forward with the program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Additional questions for Senator Hershey? Okay, thank you, Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have
Thank
one
you, committee.
unfavorable, Josh Talkin. Mr. Talkin here? Okay, Mr. Talkin is not here. Okay, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 834. We go to Senator Kaye, Senate Bill 801. And Senator, why don't you come up, and is Alex Pavlak here? Alex, there you go. Come on up, Alex, come to the table. And Senator McKay, again, take the time you need. Senate Bill 801.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senator Mike McKay here to present Senate Bill 801. I don't know if you know, but brevity shows respect. Rambling shows that you think your time matters more than everyone else's. You've heard this common theme with a couple of these bills today. Senate Bill 801, with all due respect to the committee, lowers the energy costs of Maryland ratepayers. It's going to help reduce the rising costs of for Maryland households and businesses, provides immediate ratepayer relief at the time when Maryland residents are facing a significant increase in energy bills. It will protect Maryland's energy competitiveness by requiring to withdraw from REGGI by January 1st, 2027. I do believe this is a balance and conditional path to reentry because it will allow Maryland to rejoin REGGI if all states that are serviced by PJM or interconnection participate or Maryland becomes a net exporter of electricity. I firmly believe that this is fair compensation for energy producers as it adjusts to the customer generators who are compensated over the next excess generation. At the end of the day, committee, this supports energy market transparency and accountability, encourages more responsible energy program design focused on measurable results and cost effectiveness. With all due respect, I ask a favorable committee report of Senate Bill 801. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Alex, Mr. Pavlak, you're on the up to 2-minute clock.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Alex Pavlak. I'm a PhD engineer from Smyrna Park and the chairman of the Future of Energy Initiative. Last year, I published 3 op-eds in the Baltimore Sun trying to explain why REGGI has become bad policy for the state of Maryland. The basic issue is REGGI works fine when program boundaries align with market boundaries, but in Maryland, as a member of the PJM market, we place a large REGGI tax on our in-state fossil fuel at the same time their competitors out of state in the PJM market do not pay the tax. The result is chaos. REGGI ends up increasing, not decreasing, regional greenhouse gas emissions and abusing PGE ratepayers. I urge a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Questions for Senator McKay or Mr. Pavlak? Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator McKay, this is for you or for Mr. Pavlak. You know, we hear the term tossed around, REGGI, and, most people, don't know what that acronym is or kind of what the purpose of, the regional greenhouse gas initiative. So we have proposals that are making changes to it, changes that in this case could reduce costs for ratepayers. And then we also make reference to this bill requiring Maryland to withdraw from REGGI and a mention of other states as well. So, Senator McKay, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to, kind of expand on what it looks like with Maryland withdrawing, and then you also had, they could rejoin, what that process looks like.
I'm actually going to yield to more of the expert, if I may, sir, please.
Okay. REGGI is a cap and trade program. The idea is that a fossil fuel plant that puts greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere has to pay has to buy a carbon allowance on the market. This increased the cost of doing business for the fossil fuel plant. And in a region like New England, where the program boundaries and market boundaries align, that cost can be passed on to ratepayers, and over time, cleaner, more costly generation becomes more affordable. It's a excellent program for New England. The real disagreement here is, or the real issue is with REGGI states in the PJM market. Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland are REGGI states in the PJM market, and they all suffer from the same problem. Maryland more so because of our imports. What it's doing is it's shutting down all fossil fuel in the state without replacing it. And that's because the plants in the state can't compete with other plants in the PJM market. This was not an issue when the tax was small, when the amount that was the fossil fuel plants required to pay was small. It encouraged the retirement of coal plants and the continuation of a cleaner fuel from natural gas. But it's become a serious issue because the problem, the money is getting big. $275 million was Maryland's proceeds from REGGI during 2025. And that's starting to disrupt the market. PJM is trying to keep the lights on, so what they're doing is they're imposing high capacity charges. And what's happening is the PJM BGE ratepayers are paying those capacity charges, which are being used to pay the REGGI tax, which is being used to fund the SIF, which is being used to reimburse the ratepayers. So we've got this circular flow of money that's not doing anybody any good right now. The time has passed, and REGGI is, as it currently exists, ought to be eliminated, and we should find another program or another way to incentivize our transmission.
I appreciate that explanation, just kind of being walked through it. Thank you.
Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. This question will either be for the sponsor or the expert, With Maryland withdrawing from REGGI, do we know what type of impact that would have, because I read where it says about 71% of the state's electric, EUSP, that's the Electric University Service Program. That's the funds that are used to pay help low-income folks for assistance. That's going to be wiped out. And also, you were talking about the capacity auction. If my information is correct, that should start this month. So those costs, those capacity auction costs that were delayed by PSC will start kicking in this month. So what that means, if we eliminate this, our utility cost is going to still continue to increase because of those capacity rates. So I'm just trying to figure out, or if you could perhaps articulate the overall impact this is going to have to LMIs or to the rates in general.
Okay. The REGGI is one of the primary sources of, or the primary source of funds for the Strategic Energy Investment Fund in Maryland. And terminating REGGI or withdrawing from REGGI would have a big impact on the income that is being used to fund the CEF.
Right, exactly.
However, the CEF has $1.2 billion in it, as I last saw, a good deal of which is committed. And it's being committed to programs that I think are valuable for the, particularly for the disadvantaged ratepayer, but it's also being used for a lot of programs that, frankly, I don't really see support for a rational basis for, like a huge amount of money to help fund storage projects. It would force Maryland to rethink things, and yes, it would have an impact on CEF, and there's the fiscal and policy report for one of these bills goes into the detail. It's not something that can be done easily. It's going to be painful.
Yeah, and a follow-up on that too. That would sort of undermine the state's goals about CO2 emissions. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have?
I thank you for that question. My last op-ed in the Baltimore Sun was titled, "Where's the Vision for Clean Energy?" Maryland has a net zero by 2045 goal. Net zero is a sound goal for the IPCC. It would be a sound goal for Maryland if Maryland were an island. We're not an island. We're part of PJM. So it's ambiguous, net zero by 2045. Is that net zero consumption or is it net zero production? And what's happening is that people are interpreting it as net zero production. We're going to shut down all fossil fuel in the state of Maryland. We're going to import it from out of state. And that just doesn't make any sense. We need to, in my view, rethink our basic climate goals. The goal I like is net zero for a energy independent Maryland. That makes sense. It aligns with the IPCC definition. But the fact that we are a member of PJM, that we're you can't just simply take the IPCC goal and apply it to Maryland. It's ambiguous. It's not honest. An honest goal would proceed as if we were independent or if we were in cooperation with PJM, which we aren't. Goals need to be rethought. We need to learn and adapt. That's in my world, whenever we build something new, it never works according to plan. Something always climbs out of the woodwork that you never could have anticipated that ends up screwing up your program. And the key is to take small steps, learn and adapt, and to the new set of circumstances. And we are reaching that nodal point on our climate programs REGGI is an example. The basic climate goal is an example.
Okay. Senator Brooks, you good?
I'm good. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Additional questions for either Senator McKay or Mr. Pavlak? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 801.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Senator West has a... Yes, and happy birthday, Senator McKay. Okay, I see Senator West up here on a West Hester bill. It's a good combo. On Senate Bill 840, Mr. Pavlak, you signed up favorable with amendments. Can I just bring, you got two FWA witnesses. Can I just bring them up? It's Spencer Rhoda and Alex Pavlak. Actually, Bert Wilson as well. Is Mr. Wilson here? Okay, Bert, why don't you come up? You're the witnesses on this piece of legislation.
What's that?
And so we're going to start with you, Senator West. Do you have looks like you got a PowerPoint. Again, Senate Bill 840.
I do.
And let's get you set up here. Hold on one second. Let's get technically.
Hi,
Hello, how you doing?
Chris West.
Spencer. Nice
To meet you. Alex. Guys.
Should I slide next to you, actually? Should I slide a little bit?
Yeah, come over here.
Get cozy.
Yeah.
Okay, Senator West, I think we're good
Thank you,
to go.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm presenting Senate Bill 840, which, as drafted, directs state agencies to collaborate on siting decisions for future electrical generating facilities. Senator Hester and I worked on this bill together. Unfortunately, the bill produced by the Department of Legislative Services did not incorporate the provisions that the two of us desired, and as we did not receive the bill back from DLS until the morning of the filing deadline, there was no time to work on the bill. So I filed it just before the afternoon deadline. But you should have at your desks or have delivered to your offices this morning a proposed amendment which completely replaces the current draft of the bill. So I hope a lot of people didn't spend a lot of time reading the current draft of the bill because the amendment completely supplants what you would have read if you read the current draft of the bill. I hope everybody has a copy of the amendment. It only came into my office first thing this morning via email from Legislative Services, and immediately I had it copied and delivered to your offices. Sounds like Senator Hester does not. Senator Hester, I have a copy of an amendment here, which I can provide to you. Oh, there we go.
You can continue.
Thank you. The amendment reclassifies and repurposes the bill to assign to the Maryland Stadium Authority the duty of studying Maryland's urgent need for additional electricity, devising a long-term solution to the problem, and then moving forward to implement the solution, but only after securing annual buy-in from the General Assembly, and also securing consent from the Board of Public Works for any financings needed in connection with the plan devised by the Stadium Authority. I'll explain the bill further in a few minutes, but first permit me to discuss the critical need for this bill. Maryland currently imports 40% of its electricity. Our state only generates 60% of the electricity that it needs to provide power to its homes and its businesses. This situation is on course to get far worse in the next decade. Maryland law already requires the phasing out of sales of new internal combustion engine motor vehicles by 2035, just 9 years from now. However, an executive order by Governor Moore, produced on June 4th last year, directs the State Department of Transportation to speed up the state's transition to electric vehicles. Of course, when most of the cars on our road are powered by electricity, Maryland's electricity use will dramatically increase, and the state will necessarily have to import yet more electricity from outside the state. One of the governor's initiatives is to give incentives to businesses to locate data centers in Maryland. Each data center uses huge amounts of electricity. So in this respect as well, Maryland is on course to consume massively increased amounts of electricity within the next decade. The Climate Solutions Now Act was passed in 2022. There was no discussion on the floor of the Senate at the time the bill was being debated about the effect of data centers on the state's electrical needs. Bills that mandate long-term critical policy changes in a world in which unexpected events occur with startling regularity can have unexpected consequences. Just as in 2019, no one anticipated the pandemic, in 2022, no one anticipated the phenomenal growth of data centers in this region. Maryland is not the only state on track to greatly increase its use of electricity. Based on startling data just released in January, the entire PJM grid, which extends from Chicago to the Atlantic Ocean and from the New York border down into North Carolina, is experiencing a massive increase in demand for electricity. So take a look at the first slide on the screen. I only have 2 slides today, but look at the first one. It illustrates this situation. In 2022, at the time that the General Assembly was debating the Climate Solutions Now Act, PJM was forecasting the peak summer demand for electricity system-wide would only increase marginally between 2022 and 2038, from about 150,000 megawatts per year to about 155,000 megawatts per year. Now look on the slide at the increase in 2023. Let's keep the same slide. So if you note, the vertical matrix shows the amount of megawatts. The horizontal matrix is the years. So if you look at 2022, you can see that the line, as the years proceed, hardly goes up at all. But in 2023, there is a perceptible increase. Now look at the increase forecast in 2024. This was forecast at the beginning of 2024. Now look at the 2025 increase last year. Look at the dramatic increase in expected demand on the PJM grid that just had transpired in 1 year. And now look at the 2026 forecast, which just came out in January of this year. It roughly parallels the 2025 forecast up until 2030, but then shoots up even more rapidly upwards than prior forecast. In fact, it comes close to a 45-degree angle compared to 2022, when there was no angle at all to speak of. These numbers are truly shocking. They reflect the construction of data centers grid-wide. They reflect the statutory requirements in various states, including Maryland, to convert all of the vehicles on our roads to electricity. What the slide does not reflect is the decision on the part of various states, most particularly including Maryland, to close down lots of existing facilities that generate electricity. In that regard, take a look at the next slide. It shows that the 2025 supply of electricity grid-wide was only 181,000 megawatts. When demand for electricity exceeds the available supply, blackouts result. In this regard, we have to recognize that many of the states on the grid are continuing to shut down existing generating facilities that use fossil fuels. Here in Maryland, since 2018, we have retired 6,000 megawatts of our electricity generating resources, and Talon Energy, which owns both the Brandon Shores and Wagner plants, has announced that it plans to shutter those plants by 2029, just 3 years from now. These 2 plants alone produce 2,500 megawatts of electricity. Since our entire electrical output in Maryland is only 11,000 megawatts each year, and we currently import 40% of our electricity, once Brandon Shores and Wagner close down, we will only generate 8,500 megawatts of electricity each year, and will have to import, by my mathematical calculation, over 55% of our electricity from outside the state. Those are other states which are increasingly are in a position where they don't have the electricity to send to Maryland because they're also running short of electricity. In short, this is an impending existential crisis for the state of Maryland. Now let's return to the previous slide for a moment. It shows that PJM's current projection is that in 2028, in just 2 years, on a normal hot summer day, PJM will face a demand for 170,000 megawatts of electricity. In 2030, just 4 years from now, the summer demand will have risen to 183,000 megawatts, outpacing the available supply in 2025 of 181,000 megawatts. And this doesn't factor into the computation the retirement of existing generating facilities, such as Brandon Shores, Wagner, and additional facilities in other states. As noted earlier, after 2030, the demand for electricity rises quite rapidly. Further, these numbers assume normal summertime high temperatures and normal wintertime low temperatures. If we have a particularly hot summer or a particularly cold winter like we experienced over the past 8 weeks, the demand for electricity will be far higher, and there will be a far greater likelihood of a catastrophic mismatch between the demand for electricity and the available supply. In short, within the very near future, our grid is going to experience blackout conditions. In fact, PJM has stated that it expects over 100 blackouts on the PJM grid between now and 2030. When a blackout is threatened, PJM has the ability and the responsibility to turn off electrical power on parts of the grid in order to preserve the integrity of the rest of the grid. This almost happened 3 weeks ago when BG&E issued an urgent warning that it might have to turn off part of its service area here in Maryland due to the massive demand for electricity during the cold spell. Fortunately, things didn't get as bad as they might have, and BG&E did not have to turn customers off during our recent record-breaking cold, but it was a close call. In future years, when the normal demand for electricity is much higher than at present, these turn-off decisions are going to occur, and with increasing frequency. So now let's turn to the Stadium Commission and this bill as amended. In the first place, I want to stress that this bill is very much a work in progress. It provides, I believe, an intelligent structure for dealing with the problem at hand, but it needs more fleshing out by the staff and the members of this committee. The bill directs the Stadium Authority to study Maryland's need for additional electricity. The authority is directed to formulate projections about how much electricity will be needed in Maryland in future years and how much electricity will be needed to be generated in Maryland in each of those years. It will also need to research site locations for such new electrical engineering facilities in Maryland as will be needed to supply the required amount of electricity going forward. More specifically, Senate Bill 840 directs the Stadium Authority to investigate how to provide for electrical generating facilities in Maryland capable of generating enough electricity to ensure that, together with electricity that can be reliably, emphasize here, reliably, expected to be imported into Maryland through interstate transmission lines, there will be a sufficient electricity in Maryland in order to achieve 3 explicitly provided goals. 1, to provide for the needs of Maryland citizens, its businesses, its hospitals and schools, and all other users of electricity. 2, to be available at reasonable prices, which are not unduly high compared with prices paid by consumers in other states in the Mid-Atlantic region. And 3, to be consistent with Maryland's commitment to promote clean air, clean water, and a clean environment. I believe the Stadium Authority is the best state agency to do this vital work. It has an impeccable track record of climbing on top of major projects and executing its charge as perfectly as could be hoped. It is responsible for 2 major league stadiums, the revived Hippodrome Theater, new and renewed schools across Baltimore City, and most recently the Pimlico Racetrack Reconception Project. It has never been the subject of charges of waste or abuse or corruption. In short, it takes on major tasks and brings significant infrastructure projects on time and on budget. I don't think there's an alternative that makes sense. Lots of legislators have their own views of how to solve our energy needs, from millions of batteries to modular nuclear, to an accelerated focus on renewable energy sources. But there is no consensus about any of these approaches. We can't afford to start down the preferred path of an outspoken legislator, only to realize 2 or 3 years down the road that we've taken the wrong course. The Stadium Authority has the credibility and the resources to draw on the wisdom of the smartest people in the energy sector and to formulate a plan in accordance with the guidance provided by this bill, a plan designed to solve our energy needs in Maryland as rapidly as possible. But the bill doesn't simply lateral this particular bill to the Stadium Authority and wash our hands of the problem. It requires annual reports from the authority of its plans for the following year to develop, finance, construct, acquire, own, lease, improve, operate, regulate, and maintain new electrical generating facilities. Then the bill provides that the General Assembly may pass a resolution disapproving the plans of the authority as set forth in such report. In the event that a resolution of disapproval should pass, the authority is directed not to proceed with its plans for the following year. So the General Assembly will have ultimate control over the plans formulated by the Stadium Authority. In short, the Stadium Authority will study the issue, formulate plans, and submit a comprehensive report to the General Assembly, and we will have the annual ability to, in effect, issue a stop work order if we disapprove of what the authority intends to do. In addition, the Board of Public Works will continue to have to affirmatively approve any requests to the Stadium Authority to issue bonds to finance infrastructure improvements. So this is my final bill as I can, excuse me. As I conclude my 12-year tenure. It's also perhaps the most significant bill of my legislative career. It is, as I stated earlier, a work in progress. Details will have to be filled in. Decisions will have to be made. But I believe it constitutes a workable template, to solve a most serious problem facing the state and its residents. I fear it's too late to prevent many of the electricity outages which are fated to occur in the next 5 years. But at least Senate Bill 840 charts a course that will, as rapidly as possible, produce a future in which our citizens and our state economy will be able to count on reliable electricity. I appreciate the committee's consideration of this bill, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Issues of the session, and you picked the right topic, I would say, to, the coup de grace of your legislative career. So I want to thank you for coming in here today. I feel the emotion, but let's go through the panel of three, and then we'll take some questions. So, sir, why don't you're all going to be on the 2-minute clock, and then we're going to have to move on, and we'll take some questions then, okay? Why don't you tell us who you are?
I'd just like to say that I'm absolutely moved by that. And, putting 12 years of your life into service to Maryland, everybody that sits here should be commended, because it is, as I'm quickly finding out as a candidate for delegate in 9A, it is a bit thankless. And, I think it like you said, Chairman Feldman, attacking this issue as the final thing, leaving something, as a part of your many other parts of your legacy. This is, as we've seen in the first 3 bills here today, it is an existential crisis that Maryland is facing. We do not have the energy production to meet the demand, and it's only getting worse. I'll save a lot of what I have to say about data centers for that bill, but right now, Virginia, Dominion Energy has requests to 4x its production for consumption requests that would call for 4x production. That's all drawing off the grid right now. And I think we see a lot of creative solutions. The gentleman to my left here brought up the real solution here, which is fossil fuel production. In our neighbor states, Virginia, Pennsylvania especially, and West Virginia, they have gas-fired power plants that 45% of the PJM grid is powered by these gas-fired power plants. Maryland needs to step up and get in the game here. And yes, there's going to be a little bit of egg on our face because of our clean, green energy initiatives. But in order to power our state and prevent blackouts from occurring, This is an absolute must, and we must fast-track the legislation to make it happen as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pavlak. You're up next again. Both of you are final witnesses are going to be on the up to 2-minute clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator West, for bringing this bill up. I actually like the original version of the bill that goes away to get started. So given that that's what I had to deal with, my notes refer to that. I particularly like the idea of the combining of the management structure that is emerging within Maryland with the Stadium Authority and its project management expertise, with Senator Hester's Strategic Planning Office, with the governor's sub-cabinet. This fits together, and you didn't have to pay McKinsey $10 million to do it. There's a structure here that's emerging that is that impresses me. My forte is systems architecture. Where's the vision? Where is this going in the long run? It can be a lot easier to deal with a vision of the future than trying to deal with the immediate political pressures of what we have to cope with every day. When we look around the world, we see that the new power grids, China, South Korea, Japan, they all have 10 gigawatt scale nuclear complexes located along coastlines. That's their, Ontario, Canada is in there too. It's their primary way of developing energy. Maryland has, in my view, an opportunity here. You've got Calvert Cliffs. You have data centers, and the way to power, well, in another bill I'll be talking about data centers, but basically data centers are looking, what are they going to look like when they get big? They're not big now. When they get to be 5, 10 kilowatt, 10 megawatts, they're going to be centrally located. I'll continue this. My amendment to the bill was basically a strategic amendment to look at siting at Calvert Cliffs for a 10 megawatt facility.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pavlak. Our final witness on the bill, Mr. Wilson. Again, you're on the 2-minute clock.
Good afternoon. I'm Bert Wilson. I have 35 years of energy management experience with large commercial industrial, and also in the development, operation, and ownership of energy infrastructure projects. We manage 7 PJM members and have a membership pending and have been one before. We support the bill with amendments. Thank you, Chris. I recently just met Chris. Maryland needs energy. We import far too much energy. We have for a very long time. We import 40% of energy, 50% by the end of this decade. We need local power generation for both reliability and to moderate overall cost. Power Authority could be instrumental in supporting and accelerating new projects. Whether the Power Authority owns the units or sells the development rights is to be determined. NYPA, New York Power Authority, provides a good illustration. One of our partners ran the distribution system of Con Edison and worked instrumentally with NYPA to when the New York City reliability requirements were failing and had NYPA put in new peakers. That solved the reliability issues in New York City. I believe the same kind of thing could be done here. I think the Maryland Stadium Authority is a suitable entity to do it. They've actually been a client in the past, and if one looks, they have a small power plant underneath the Hamburg Street Bridge. All market-based types of local generation are needed, large, small, short-term, long-term, solar, gas-fired, whatever it is, we need to do it, and we need to do it quickly. It's our responsibility, though, to be ever cleaner. I'd like to say the bill as presented studies alternatives. We think it needs action. Time for studies passed. We can't wait for others. We need to act. I suggest amending it to create action. I suggest we should target at least 3 sites that are suitable for power generation by the end of this year for at least 1,000 megawatts of power. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilson. Okay, we'll take some questions from the committee, and then we'll pivot to Senate President and his bill next up. So with that, we'll start with Senator Hester with the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator, I am very proud to have worked on this bill with you. Your drafting efforts are much better than mine. But we did discuss, in fact, the idea, of taking this administration's goal of looking for really good places, near transmission lines, to site, power generation. We discussed, trying to harness the thinking that was going to come out of the energy sub-cabinet. But then when we talked to members of the administration, I was like, well, how are you actually going to, where are you going to get the money to do your first site level plan or your CPCN or whatever, because PPRP is now approving the site level plans. So there's no real way for the state to take that next step. And so that gave us the idea for the Power Authority. And, Senator West, drafted his own amendment over the weekend. It was an amazing effort. My only complaint about this, Senator, is that I really enjoyed our close proximity on the third floor for our first 4 years. And once you moved away to the other end of the hall, I really missed you down here. But I really do think that this is a good bill. We need to provide a way for the state to reduce the risk for generators to come, and one of the ways we can do that is by having the Stadium Authority do some of the early assessments on the best places in the state to de-risk them through doing some of those early assessments. But thank you very much for the bill, Senator.
I don't know if that was a question. How about that was commentary? Do you need to respond or?
Just in one sentence, I said during my presentation that this is a work in progress. And one of the elements where this bill could definitely be improved is some reference, in the specific reference to citing decisions. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go Vice Chair Kagan. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
And then we'll go Gallion, and then Carrozza. Then I think at that point, I do want to get the Senate President up here. So Vice Chair Kagan, then Gallion, and then Carrozza, and then we'll move to the next bill. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, Senator West, thank you for your 12 years of service. It has been an honor and a joy to work with you on so many things, and thank you for your leadership.
And again, I'm sorry for my emotionalism.
Don't ever apologize.
It wasn't really until I read those words that it all hit me that this is the end.
We're going to miss you a lot. The Stadium Authority is literally meeting right this minute. They're in a board meeting at 2 o'clock. It is live streaming. I think the idea of the Stadium Authority is a little brilliant, so I really commend you and Senator Hester on that. My question is, I'm on their website, and they have a ton of completed projects. There are 25 that are on their website as current. I'm wondering if they have the capacity to take this on, and because the bill has been amended so significantly, do we have any idea of fiscal load or the number of human beings, the pins that are going to be needed in order to take on this burden, this responsibility?
The answer to both your questions is no. And it was a shock to me when the bill came back, and it bore little relation to what we had asked for. So the amendment is recently produced. There is no fiscal note that reflects the amendment. Okay. And the Stadium Authority, unfortunately, I'm not sure they've seen the amendment because I just got it back this morning.
Right.
So they're not here to comment on it, which is really unfortunate. But we do have 6 weeks to go.
Yes.
I'm hoping there's time to work with them on it.
Okay. Again, they're in a board meeting right this minute, but I think it's interesting, and I think it's a really good idea for the location. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think our final question will be Senator Carrozza. Mr. President, Senator West announced that this was his last bill presentation of his entire legislative career. So, okay, with that, Senator Carrozza, you'll have the last question, then we'll move to the next bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. Senator West, our 12 years have been together. As a delegate and over here together, and we have a shared mentor with Jervis S. Finney that we both benefited from his wisdom. I wanted to ask you and just commend you for the brilliance of whatever role the Maryland Stadium Authority ends up with in the future as we move forward with Maryland energy policy. I wanted to just give you that opportunity to answer that question, why the Maryland Stadium Authority, so the general public understands the respect and the expertise that they can bring to really be a major player in moving forward.
Thank you for the question. I think I pretty much answered that in my testimony, but let me recapitulate briefly. The Stadium Authority has never had a whiff of scandal. They bring in their projects on time. They've done major infrastructure projects. There's never been a suggestion of waste or fraud or abuse. The financial aspects, and they deal with vast amounts of money, have always been impeccable. They have a solid 100% track record of bringing their projects in, on time and on budget. If we're talking here about some major infrastructure, having to build more energy facilities here in Maryland, and I think the Stadium Authority is the organization which has demonstrated through its past work that it can do this work for us and do it well.
And along those lines, by your identifying them as having a major role, those of us who have worked with the Maryland Stadium Authority on major projects like the Ocean City Convention Center can speak to their expertise, their follow-through, and as you said, their complete professionalism. So I just want to commend you on identifying them as a key player for our success in moving forward.
One more sentence, if I could. No matter who goes forward, it's going to cost money in terms of pins. And my feeling is the Stadium Authority has the experience of spending that money wisely. Other state agents, maybe not so much. So I would put my faith in the Stadium Authority to get this job done and get it done effectively and efficiently. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's going to complete the bill hearing on Senate Bill 840. Thank you very much, Senator West, for the bill. We're going to next move to Senate President Ferguson on Senate Bill 771. Mr. President, I've got three sponsor panelists here, Sarah Westrick, Laurel Peltier, Brittany Baker. So why don't you come up to the table on Senate Bill 771, and Mr. President, you take the time you need to present the bill, then we'll go to the three witnesses, and then we'll take some Q&A, okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the EEE Committee. It is a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Before I jump into testimony, I do want to make one administrative note for a member of the panel. So Michael Powell, who you all know very, very well, who runs the OPEGA, the Performance Evaluation Unit within DLS, is here not in support or opposition to the bill whatsoever. He and we all take his role extremely seriously as nonpartisan, apolitical, but the bill is a product of a report that they produced, and so he is here exclusively for informational purposes. So just want to make that very clear on the front end.
We used Devin Dodson in that capacity on the bill last week, so yes. I had to make the same exact speech
exactly.
Last week.
It's important that we keep that very clear because they're such an incredible professional staff. So thank you all for hearing today Senate Bill 771, which, as I forecasted a bit, is related to the energy crisis and utility bill issue that we are facing across the state of Maryland. This is one particular issue within the larger context of energy bills that we have the opportunity and ability to do something that will be very targeted, purposeful, and effective. Last year, near the middle of session, the Office of Performance Evaluation released a report that was the evaluation of the Office of Home Energy Programs. They administer the Maryland Energy Assistance Program, the Gas Arrearage Retirement Assistance Program, the Electric Universal Service Program, and the Electric Arrearage Retirement Assistant Program. All wonderfully well-intentioned programs to support income-constrained individuals with their utility bills and gas bills. The challenge and what the Office of Performance Evaluation found is that because of the various qualifications and issues and eligibility requirements and funding components, what they found is that there were many cases in which one program would be highly effective, would be fully utilized, and would exhaust its funds, and while another one had very complicated, burdensome eligibility requirements and would be left with surpluses, or some vice versa, and it fluctuated throughout the years. And so as a recommendation as part of this report and the evaluation, the Office of Performance Evaluation made the recommendation that we consider collapsing these different 4 separate programs into one wholly eligibility-based program that allows for greater flexibility and targeting relief to individuals who need it most. And so that is the bill before you. Because it was late in session last year, we did not have the time or opportunity to really get into the weeds to put this together. And so in the Next Generation Act that this committee was so thoughtfully passed last year, we incorporated asking a provision that asked the Department of DHS to, no, it was a DHR. Now I'm trying to remember who we asked to do it. DHS, it was DHS, to work with the report from the Office of Performance Evaluation to come up with recommendations for how we could do this. And so ultimately, that is what Senate Bill 771 is a culmination of a year's worth of work to try to collapse these programs to get resources to those Marylanders who need it most at a time where affordability is top of mind. So with that, would urge a favorable report. And thank my the wonderful members of the panel who are here to testify.
Okay, we'll take their testimony and then take questions that work for you.
Please.
Okay, Ms. Westrick, why don't you go next? Each of you are going to be on the 2-minute clock, okay, up to 2 minutes. So why don't you start?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Westrick. I'm the Advocacy Director for AARP Maryland, and we thank President Ferguson for bringing this bill. AARP Maryland represents more than 850,000 members across the state, making it one of the largest membership-based organizations advocating for older Marylanders. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering people to live their best lives as they age, and our work focuses on issues that matter most to older adults and their families, including affordable utilities and financial security. For Maryland seniors, stable and affordable access to energy is a matter of health, safety, and dignity. Many older adults lived on fixed incomes that simply do not keep pace with rising utility costs. And when forced to choose between paying for prescriptions, food, or heating their homes, many seniors make unthinkable sacrifices. Programs like the Electric Universal Service Program and fuel assistance are lifelines that prevent these impossible choices. Senate Bill 771 strengthens these critical supports by consolidating Energy Assistance Administration under the Office of Home Energy Programs, enabling more efficient service delivery and a more streamlined experience for seniors seeking assistance. The bill also expands the flexibility of existing funds, ensuring that both electric and fuel assistance programs can better meet the unique needs of older adults. By modernizing the program's administration while preserving oversight, this bill helps ensure that seniors can safely remain in their homes and avoid utility shutoffs. On behalf of Maryland's older residents, we respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Ms. Peltier.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. I'm Laurel Peltier, and I'm proud to volunteer with AARP, and I also chair Maryland Energy Advocates Coalition. We are ratepayer advocates working to ensure that limited income families can afford their utility bills. I'm also part of this effort by OHEP to try new projects. Our coalition does critical medical needs for the state, and we were thrilled to to throw our support behind this bill. SB 771 is a bill that fixes some items that were recommended by the Legislative Services Audit, which is really neat to see great ideas that actually get implemented through regulations and out in the field. And I have to say, if you don't have to explain to a senior, especially one over the phone who's sick, if you don't have to say MEEP, EUSP, GERA, and ARA again, that would be awesome. But basically, this is a fix-it bill, and these are the kind of things that actually make it a lot easier for agencies, even our little teeny agency in the city and the county, to get energy assistance out to these families who really, really need it. So strong support. Thank you.
Ms. Baker.
Hello, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. I'm Brittany Baker, Maryland Director of Chesapeake Climate Action Network, and I'm here because I do believe in people first climate action. So when I'm traveling around the state, I do talk about clean energy and climate, but often I'm connecting people to utility assistance with Laurel right by my side. And so when I'm telling people about utility assistance, I mention two things, the Empower program and the OHEP program. And most LMI homes are poorly weatherized and have data inefficient appliances, and that's why they experience higher energy burdens. I'm so glad to see Senate President Ferguson working on this issue because Baltimore is one of the areas in the state and the nation where we have the highest energy burdens. This bill refines the utility assistance landscape, of course, on the customer side. And a bill that did that in the past was the categorical eligibility bill, which reduced barriers to signing up on the customer side. But this also relieves issues on the administrative side, specifically related to LIHEAP, how much funding we're applying for every year, and how we utilize that funding. We know that right now Maryland is using about 90% of LIHEAP funding for heating, 3% for cooling, 4% for crisis, and 4% for weatherization. But we also know that extreme heat summers mean we need more money for cooling. Weatherization improves the entire envelope of the home. And all of the issues that we're seeing with data centers and PJM and rising distribution rates mean we have more people in crisis. So outside of need, availability is lower because LIHEAP is no longer providing gas arrearage assistance. And in Baltimore, that pipeline spending is making gas bills really high. So for all of these reasons, we're in robust support of this bill, and we request a favorable report on SB 0771.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Baker, and the entire panel. You're just here for questions, Mr. Powell, or you're presenting?
I think I was
You want to sit? You're
asked to
free
present
do-
a little bit of something, and
Absolutely.
I don't think I
Why
need my
don't-
2
why don't you
minutes.
go? We're not even going to put you on the clock. Come on.
No, thanks so much for having me. Mike Powell, Director of the Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability, and again, just here for informational purposes. We did do a report, issued a report about 13 months ago that I think is the basis for some of this bill, but I want to go back maybe another year and remind the committee why we were asked to do that report in the first place, and that was because about 9 months into the fiscal year, DHS realized that they had already overspent their budget for energy assistance, and it was for a variety of reasons, but as a consequence of that, many people who needed that assistance weren't able to get it. And in doing that work, one of the things we learned was the issue here before us today, which is it doesn't make a ton of sense that the availability of assistance depends on the source of energy you use to heat or cool or electrify your home. And so we made, I think, a fairly cautious recommendation that the legislature could consider consolidating those things. My recollection is that DHS's response to that recommendation was, if not in favor of it, at least not against it, and kind of talked through the ways that could be done legislatively. And I think that's part of what brought us here today. So thanks for having me, and I can take questions if there are.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll take questions from the committee to the Senate President or the 4 witnesses. Seeing? No? All good? Okay. That concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 771.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And totally unrelated to this particular piece of legislation or anything else you have, 46th District Night is tonight at 6:30. We have Ekibon, which is a James Beard Award-winning restaurant. So if in the case that you are here tonight, 6:30 in the Miller West, please know all member staff, please are very
Okay,
welcome.
we'll make that part of the Senate Bill
Unrelated to the bill
771
whatsoever.
record.
Yes.
Thank
All right,
you,
thank
Mr.
you.
President. Okay, I see Senator Sidnor has walked into the room, so we're going to take Senate Bill 853 next, Senator Sidnor. And I've got, let's see who we got. We got Andrew Enheim, Eric Bonds, as part of your sponsor panel, although we do have a third witness sign up straight favorable, Pat Garofalo. If you could just bring him up, he's straight favorable. Pat, are you here? Why don't you just join the table since you're in the same posture as the other witnesses. So, Senator Sidnor, we're on Senate Bill 853.
All right.
And you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senator Sidnor, on behalf of Senate Bill 853. As modern data and processing needs explode, the physical hardware enabling these advances in technology need to be stored and powered and cooled. Land, energy, and water are all necessary for these data center projects, but they are also necessary for every other form of development, and making decisions about where those resources should be allocated can be polarizing. In my district, in Baltimore County, we recently passed a moratorium on data centers when, in response to public conversations held by me and others in District 44, county lawmakers realized that they didn't have a full picture of the resources required to build and operate data centers. Meanwhile, Calvert County is updating its zoning laws and exploring the possibility of offering tax incentives to entice data centers, although county officials have stressed the fact that this exploration is in its early stages. Data centers can be an economic boon for towns, no doubt, but they also consume a significant amount of resources, and communities deciding whether the benefits are worth the cost face a difficult enough conversation without the public officials being bound by non-disclosure agreements. In Wisconsin, the company Meta used shell corporations and NDAs to obscure its involvement in building a data center for more than a year, while public officials created custom tax incentives districts for the project and signed pre-development agreements. In our neighbor in Virginia, in 2025, survey conducted via Freedom of Information Act request found that 31 localities with existing approved or proposed data centers, at least 25 of those localities have non-disclosure agreements in some capacity. When questioned about the need for secrecy, data center companies and their representatives cite delicate negotiations for tax incentives or competitors vying for a limited number of feasible sites. In the same breath, however, they strategize to keep water usage projections confidential and suggest visually reviewing documents without providing copies to skirt existing public records laws. If these projects seek public resources like tax incentives, water, and energy, it is unacceptable to conceal these details that would allow for informed debate. As the authors of a Virginia study point out, if these data center projects are in the public interest, the projects should be able to withstand scrutiny even as they develop. With all that in mind, I noted that when the bill was first put in for drafting, it was done so in a very broad manner. So I have an amendment that should have been shared with the committee, where Senate Bill 853 would prohibit non-disclosure agreements between government officials and people or entities that are involved in establishing or operating data centers, not the broad draft that was presented, and I believe many of the folk who are coming in opposition have read. So by government officials, I mean employees or contractors of the Maryland Department of Commerce, the members and employees of a local government, and the members and employees of the General Assembly. Senate Bill 853 also subjects public service utility companies to the Public Information Act. Transparency regarding data centers, water, and energy usage is vital, as I said, to reasoned decision-making. NDAs between data centers and public officials short-circuit debate in order to arrive at predetermined outcomes. Senate Bill 853 affirms that informed debate is valuable, whether the project in question is an apartment complex or a data center. And I would even offer to the committee, if even after looking at the amendment, if you still feel that the bill is drafted too broadly, that you can narrow it. The bill is yours. And just to note, this stuff isn't theoretical. Just yesterday in Southern Maryland Chronicle, there was an article that was posted about the Calvert County Board of County Commissioners who had to address resident concerns over a non-disclosure agreement with Amazon Web Services and the recent job postings for data center roles in Lusby during their March 3rd, 2026 meeting. So these are very relevant. I mean, we're all talking data centers right now, and many of us, and I know in Woodlawn, we were in the dark of really trying to figure out what was going on, and it took a lot of scrambling, and I thank those people who go unnamed for talking with me just so that we could get a better sense of what was going on. But really what's going to happen, you all are going to be in a public meeting like I was, and everyone's going to be looking at you wondering what you knew and what you didn't know. Because someone decided to put something that dealt with the public good in a non-disclosure agreement. This bill, while not perfect, is your opportunity to really make certain that the public is aware of those public goods. So with that, I would ask for a favorable and turn it over to my panel.
Okay, thank you. Sir, why don't you go first, and each of you go down the table. Each of you are going to be on the 2-minute clock, okay?
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Enum. I am testifying on behalf of the Science Policy and Diplomacy Group at Johns Hopkins. We are a group of early career scientists committed to ensuring that public policy is guided by the best available scientific evidence. We are here today in strong support of SB 853 as amended. Artificial intelligence has the potential to bring meaningful benefits to Marylanders, from advances in transportation to medical research. However, this progress must not come at the expense of our communities, our environment, or public health. The rapid expansion of large-scale AI data center proposals across Maryland raises serious concerns about energy demand, water use, air quality, and the long-term community impacts. How do we know about these risks? Because we rely on the evidence. Scientists can collect data and analyze trends and model future impacts to help decision makers and the public understand the risks. But too often we are denied access to this critical information because non-disclosure agreements between data center developers and public officials prevent the release of that critical information, and that undermines the public's ability to evaluate potential harms. When key information is hidden, evidence-based policymaking becomes impossible. SB 853 is a critical step towards ensuring that a story similar to that of Memphis, where communities are being covered in the toxic pollutants of a hyperscale data center, does not unfold here in Maryland. By prohibiting public officials from entering into non-disclosure agreements with data center developers, this bill protects the public's right to information. Transparency allows independent experts to evaluate proposals, enables communities to make informed decisions, and ensures that any promise of economic development does not override public health and environmental protections. If a data center proposal truly benefits Marylanders, then it should withstand public scrutiny. We respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on SB 853 as it is amended.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Eric Bonds, and I'm a sociology professor at the University of Mary Washington in Virginia, and I have surveyed the use of non-disclosure agreements in my state. I'm here to give testimony in support of Senate Bill 853 because I believe that non-disclosure agreements can impose a barrier to public information. I have found that non-disclosure agreements are not written narrowly to protect cutting-edge technology. Instead, they're written with very broad language, with words, to inhibit business plans or quote-unquote non-public information. And in practice, this can mean that the public is deprived of important knowledge before local leaders make decisions. In my community of Fredericksburg, Virginia, the City Council took public comment on by right land rezoning for a data center campus, but the public was not informed of the name of the data center company backing the development until the night of the City Council's vote. The public was not informed of the size of the data center operation until the morning after the vote of approval. Confidentiality agreements can also prevent the public from learning about data center water use, even when local governments approve data center water service agreements. I can point to 5 different instances in Virginia where this water use information involving the delivery of millions of gallons of water a day was redacted from the public record. This information was later revealed in the course or outcome of lawsuits or after threats of lawsuits, but that was after decisions to approve these water service agreements was already made. The public has a right to know crucial information. Maryland has an opportunity to avoid some of the missteps we've made in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. We actually have a Senator Mary Washington. She's not here today, but since you're representing the school there, Virginia. Okay, sir.
Thank you to the members of the committee for allowing me to testify today. My name is Pat Garofalo, and I'm the Director of State and Local Policy at the American Economic Liberties Project, a research and advocacy organization dedicated to reducing the power dominant corporations wield over our economy and democracy. I'm also a co-founder of Ban Secret Deals, a bipartisan coalition of state and national advocates pushing for the elimination of non-disclosure agreements in economic development deals. As such, we strongly support SB 853 and commend the Senator for its introduction. Non-disclosure agreements are expressly intended to cut key stakeholders, including residents and local business owners, out of economic development decisions that affect the communities in which they live, work, and raise families. Our organization's tracking has shown that they are aggressively employed everywhere across the country, including in Maryland. These agreements violate a fundamental principle of local democracy, that community members should be able to provide input into the use of public resources and receive information allowing them to evaluate the work of elected officials and public servants. By hiding the details of economic development deals, often including the identity of the company that will be receiving public money or public resources, NDAs prevent this flow of information and democratic feedback. Corporations such as Google have admitted that preventing public input into deals is the explicit goal of NDAs. The use of NDAs is especially concerning in data center development deals, as those can have profound impacts on public resources, including power and water, as well as quality of life impacts, while creating few permanent jobs for local workers. Now, opponents of this bill will tell you that NDAs are normal and required to protect proprietary information. That is false. These agreements almost always cover far more than proprietary information and trade secrets, again, often including the literal identity of the corporation in question. And to be clear, no one is asking that trade secrets be made public for economic development planning. No one at a zoning commission is asking for the formula to New Coke. Banning these agreements would be a major step towards bringing transparency and accountability to Maryland's economic development system. About a half dozen other states are considering similar bills, so we urge you to support this one.
Senator Harris, you're first up.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair. To the sponsor of the bill, great bill, extremely great bill. And I'm going to get to my question in a second because, you know, my personal opinion, at the end of the day, public officials, emphasis on the word public officials, should not be going into NDAs that makes decisions for the public, right? And so my question is, because what some folks are going to say is it's going to affect economic development. So in what ways does the bill ensure that the public rights to information is preserved while balancing economic interests?
And thank you for the question. When the bill was first put in, I will admit it was too broad. And we read through the information. So it has been narrowed to just data centers, but really, you all, if you wanted to, you could narrow it even further because it still talks about what data centers do. But honestly, I mean, trade secrets and proprietary information that's already protected under the Public Information Act, that stuff isn't going to get out to anyone. But again, if there are still concerns, the bill could be narrowed to things that are of interest to the public good. Again, we're talking public water usage, with everything happening with electricity use and the like. You could include that and a variety of other things. I will certainly leave it up to you all as the experts in this particular area, but I think this bill provides at the foundation needed to make certain that the public is not cut out of this very important decision as we move forward and of introducing these data centers into our state.
Appreciate it.
And mind you, and some of you know, outside of the General Assembly, I work in a general counsel's office. So I draft non-disclosure agreements. Nothing like this, nothing that deals with data centers, but to the professor's testimony, he's absolutely right. A non-disclosure agreement can be as broad as saying, I can't even tell you that I entered into an agreement. And how that is fair to the public will be beyond me. So, thank you.
Okay, Senator Watson.
I appreciate the intent of the bill, but I feel it misses a little bit of business acumen. So non-disclosure agreements are all about competition, right? And while you narrowed this down to data centers, non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, are applicable in so many things. I've been a consultant for DOD for 30 years. Every contract has a non-disclosure agreement. And so my questions are very specific, since you want to talk data centers. Do you think if you didn't have non-disclosure agreements, would the data centers competitors be able to see where that person is going to deploy a new data center?
It's possible. But again, what I was suggesting before is that this committee could narrow it to things that are good to the public good. I don't care necessarily about where someone who's intending on placing a data center may or may not want to place it. I'm concerned more about those things in public that are going to be affecting the people. So
Do you think real estate speculation could drive up land prices?
Sure it could.
Right. So there are a variety of things that would put a data center at a disadvantage if they disclose too much information. And even right now in Prince George's County, as we've been trying to sell or get a buyer for the Six Flags property, we still don't even know who the ultimate purchaser of that property is or what their intended use is, because it's under strict NDA. And it's under that NDA for a variety of reasons, but it's most for competition, because you don't want to signal to a competitor what kind of moves you're making. That just goes against, sound way to grow business.
That's some purposes of NDAs, but as I said, I've drafted NDAs and they're not always about competition.
Did you draft NDAs for a data center?
No, I already said I didn't.
Okay, so
but
let's say
you said there's a fundamental.
So we're getting down to what information should be applicable to the public, and that's what you're asking us to try to figure out when it comes to a broader data center. Is that right?
That could be. I think our professor, he actually had a response, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much. I guess one point that I'd like to make is that, from my perspective, it's maybe not the public's or the role of local government to shield large corporations from competition. And that includes around land prices for development. These are, data center developers are some of the largest corporations or most profitable companies in the world. Is that is that an appropriate role for local government to use secrecy to make sure that these big corporations can get land in the county or the city for the lowest value possible?
Of course it is. So if I know, think about this for a minute, because I've seen it happen, and you've been around for a while, and you've seen it happen too. If you know that an FBI building is coming to Greenbelt, you're going to move your businesses to Greenbelt because you're going to be in that footprint, and you're actually increasing the property value. And if you buy it in the right place where FBI would now have to purchase that property from you, you're making the best flip ever imaginable in real estate. It happens every day. And so all I'm saying is what you care about, I think, is power demand, water use, land zoning, and local tax incentives. Now, if we can find a way where we can agree on those pieces and when they are relevant to be exposed to the public, I think we're on to something. But just to say the broader NDA, like you said, I think it kills business. And for the state of Maryland to say we're open for business, to put something like that in place without being very specific, I think harms us. So I'm looking forward to working with you on this.
Okay, let's go to next. We'll go to Senator Hester next up.
Thank you. I was just trying to remember I think the governor said something about data centers in his State of the State. And it was something like, Maryland will continue to welcome data center investment, but the growth must be infrastructure aligned, ratepayer neutral, and responsible. So I personally thank the senator for bringing the bill to us. And I think that this committee should take him at his suggestion that we narrow it to what is, infrastructure aligned, ratepayer neutral, and responsible. And in that vein, I have a couple questions for anybody, maybe the professor. But when you think about the public good that these data centers are I think about it in three chunks. Like one, the water. There's water you could get a water permit through a county or maybe through MDE if it's like an aquifer or something like that. So do you think that the first question is, is water definitely out? The second question is around the electricity. And let's say that there is a limited amount you're in a transmission constrained area. There's a limited amount. If that data center is going to come in, it's going to create a huge reliability risk for the constituents around that area. I think electricity is also kind of a shared public good. That's the second part of my question. And the third part is, I think at the PJM level, we've seen that the shopping around, is creating this kind of phantom load. Like, we don't know exactly how many data centers are coming, because if they apply in 4 different counties, they get 4 different times, then the PJM markets say, okay, now we've got to buy, 4 times as much. So I think there is some, like the good senator was saying, there's some gaming on the real estate, but we also have to know how many gigawatts are coming so we can build adequate capacity. And PJM has asked the states to help them in identifying this phantom load. So I guess my question is, as we think about how to narrow this bill, what of the things that I just said, plus any other things, would the panel suggest be things that really should be should be prohibited in a non-disclosure agreement?
Not all 3 have to answer, but here, why don't you, sir, you rose your hand, but you got there you go.
There we go. Something that might be worth the committee's time is, after a similar situation to the one the senator described in Pima County, Arizona, they adopted changes to their NDA process. The county commissioners there were unhappy with the way a data center project got down, and the way they do it is there can be NDAs, but they have to be periodically reviewed by the county commission, and they must expire 60 days before any public vote, and they cannot, to exactly your point, cover information about public resources, so nothing covering water use, power use, tax incentives. And so that 60-day window does give, I think, the public adequate time to assess, look, and be prepared for any sort of public hearing. So that just might be something that you all want to look at. And I'm happy to send that over to whoever would be interested.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, I'll here, we're looking for some ideas here.
Absolutely, thank you very much. I think that just tackling the issue of water use and energy use would be extremely important. I know that there's legislation that is being, considered right now in Virginia. So that would be a major step forward. But I would also, think about the possibility of limitations over information around backup generators, that these can be really important information for neighbors to know about before data center projects are approved.
Okay, why don't we stop there? Thank you, Senator Sidnor. Thank you to the panel. We do have 3 witnesses signed up unfavorable. I'm going to call Andrew Zirkle up from the Tech Council. Andrew here. Okay, I don't see Kelly Schultz, but she is on the list. Tom Ballantyne. Mr. Ballantyne. I think I saw Mr. Ballantyne earlier, but he's not here now. In any event, sir, you're on the unfavorable side of things, so why don't you proceed under the 2-minute clock?
Yep, I will be pinch hitting for Kelly today. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee. For the record, my name is Andrew Zirkle, and I am here on behalf of the Maryland Tech Council. Before I begin, I will note that my testimony was prepared for the original version of the bill that was broader rather than the amended version of the bill that the sponsor mentioned, but I will still go through the Tech Council's concerns with what we have. NDAs are a routine and essential business tool that are used nationwide in economic development negotiations. When companies explore potential expansion relocation, they're frequently evaluating multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. And as many economic development professionals can attest to you, these agreements are extraordinarily common in jurisdictions around the country. This negotiation process includes sharing highly sensitive information, including proprietary technology and infrastructure plans, financial projections, capital investment strategies, workforce planning, energy usage projections, intellectual property considerations, and tons of other confidential information. A requirement to share such information publicly during the very earliest stages of negotiations can harm a company's competitive position and put critically needed economic development projects in jeopardy for location in Maryland. States that compete for economic development projects commonly use targeted confidentiality agreements during negotiations, and prohibiting these NDAs outright for public officials and staff involved in these discussions would put Maryland at a distinct competitive advantage. If Maryland becomes one of the only states to prohibit NDAs during negotiation, companies may simply remove Maryland from consideration. Our experience is that site selection consultants would advise their clients to avoid states where they can't guarantee confidentiality for trade secrets or other sensitive information. And, I know the sponsor had mentioned that he's looking to narrow the bill, but whether it's data centers, cybersecurity, biotechnology, quantum computing, we have made a push to become a leader nationwide, and we're concerned that this bill takes a step backwards in Maryland's efforts to develop these industries in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Senator Harris. I think this is a really good idea, and I think it gives us a little more control over the process. I have a question for you. We just heard a bill from Senator West, and obviously who knows what bills move and what don't yet at this early stage. But he proposed having data centers overseen by the Stadium Authority. Stadium Authority, along with most Maryland departments and agencies, are subject to our open meetings law. So that means, and as I mentioned in an earlier hearing, their meeting, I don't know if their meeting is still going on right this second, but they were from 2 to 3 at least, meeting and live streaming their meeting. Do you have, or does the Tech Council have any suggestions of a modest amendment that would say lots of sunshine, lots of transparency, except for at this critical moment? And before I pause, I just want to let you know, for instance, with the 911 board, and they do a lot of stuff that's related to cybersecurity and stuff that we don't want live streamed. They do their whole meetings. So does the State Board of Elections. So do a lot of folks with sensitive information, and then they say, okay, now we're going offline. We're going to go into closed session and not talk about this part in public. So if you want to think about that either now, Mr. Zirkle, or think about it and come back with a narrow exemption, maybe that could give us both the transparency that would be in the public interest, as well as the confidentiality that you and Senator Watson were talking about.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think that especially since the sponsor indicated some willingness to narrow things, there could be some daylight. I think something that's important to consider, though, is there's often sort of two sides to an equation when it comes to certain aspects of development. Something that was brought up was water usage. And while it's undoubtedly important to make sure that our water resources in the state of Maryland can support planned development, something as simple as disclosing in super early stages a water projection could indicate to a competitor what kind of technology is being used. Are they using closed loop cooling? Are they using electric cooling? You know, now the competitors to a project know because of a super early exposure. So I think we can definitely take a look. I think there's some daylight, but there's certainly a consideration that these issues have sort of a dual-sided nature to them.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Carrozza, then Senator Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. As I was understanding it, you were raising, because we're on this one bill, specific issues of where that could be, make it an additional burden or challenge for a corporation to consider Maryland. But I think what I was hearing in between is that it's kind of the cumulative effect of how many of those other regulations and challenges that are on the books that are already, in some cases, not only preventing companies from coming to Maryland, but in some cases actually driving them out. Can you expand on that?
Well, I will say I think Maryland has a lot of great advantages for these industries, especially our workforce, but we've definitely seen a challenge in recent years, whether we're talking data centers or other industries that are represented by the Tech Council. We've seen a lot of growth in neighboring states, and we've seen it more of a flat line here. And I think the concern, and I tried to make this clear in my testimony, is that this is just maybe not the straw that breaks the camel's back, but there's plenty of folks who are interested in developing here in Maryland, whether it's proximity to the federal government, whether it's our highly educated workforce, but there's also many challenges they have to face. And this is just one additional challenge that we're concerned could push meaningful potential development out of the state.
Thank you.
Senator Harris, why don't you have the final question here, okay?
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And I know we keep going back and saying, Maryland, at the end of the day, Maryland is 100% open for business, right? We ain't turning folks away. However, there is a process I believe we should have in place and should be transparent with our constituents, with the public. So here, my question for you and the Tech Council is, will you come to us and help us frame something like this so that we can have a quality policy in place so that the public is not in the dark. The businesses still can have what they view as their privacy for their business, but at the end of the day, you know, it's something that we all can have work together on. And I think that this right here is an issue. It's an issue across the board. It's an issue in my area, and people are irate about it. So we got to figure out something. Cannot do nothing. So we got to figure something out. So can we have you all's you all at the table with us to figure this out?
Absolutely. We would be happy to, you know, as the committee continues work on this issue and others, we're happy to be at the table in terms of, you know, what these particular policies would mean for development in the state. And we understand the intention behind this bill and the goal of transparency, and we do appreciate that as well. So we're happy to come to the table and discuss how to straddle the line, how to find the daylight, and make sure that we can continue to do business in the state of Maryland and respond to, you know, concerns from constituents. So
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's going to conclude the bill hearing on Senate Bill 853. Senator Harris, we're going to go to you next. Senate Bill 929. We got a lot of favor with amendment witnesses lined up, but I don't know if you want to bring anybody up. You could present the bill, and then I could bring up a panel or two after. Okay, I see some folks coming to the table. Okay, well, I do know, here, I'm going to call some names. Okay, why don't you tell me, well, you just sit down, and we're going to be good, okay? Okay, Senator Harris, do you know who you have at your table here? And
Yes,
are they at your?
These will be on my panel here, and everyone else, they're going to flow with it, right? They're going to flow with it.
Okay, we'll get to them next. Yes. We're going to start with you, Senator Harris, on Senate Bill 929.
Appreciate that, good Chairman. Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and the members of this wonderful, best, top-of-the-line committee. For the record, Senator Kevin M. Harris here, representing Legislative District 27, which is Prince George's, Charles, and Calvert County, here to present Senate Bill 929, Home Improvement Contractors, Disaster Mitigating Services, Regulating and Prohibition. The intent of Senate Bill 929 is to restrict predatory businesses practices by home improvement contractors after a disaster. Soliciting after disasters has long been reported across Maryland, emphasizing the urgent need for protection against predatory business behavior. Senate Bill 929 outlines disaster as a serious event that causes harm to a home, building, or other structure and requires emergency response services. Its intent is to assist all victims of disaster by emphasizing that the existence of a disaster is not contingent on a declaration of the state of an emergency by the federal government or the governor or a local disaster declaration. Senate Bill 929 allows homeowners to rescind home improvement contracts for disaster mitigation services within 5 days of entering it. Under the amendment to this bill, a homeowner will only be liable to pay an amount that is a fair and reasonable value for the necessary work performed under the home improvement contract prior to the cancellation. In the amendments, it is also marked that it is fraudulent as a fraudulent act for contractors offering home repairs or remodeling services for damages to a private residence to directly or indirectly pay or otherwise compensate an insured or offer to pay or compensate an insurer for any part of the insurer's deductible under their insurer's property of casualty insurance policy if payment for the services will be made for the proceeds of that policy. The bill ensures the dignity of victims of disasters and their right to fair and proper assistance for their damages. For these reasons, we respectfully request a favorable committee report on Senate Bill 929 and turn it over to my panel. Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll go with your two panelists. So let's get a mic. Bob, could you pass that mic down to the end? And give us your name, and you're each going to be on the 2-minute clock, okay?
Yes, sir. My name is Alexis Snyder, and I serve as head of rapid response at Thomasville Restoration here in Maryland. In my role, I work directly with homeowners in immediate aftermaths of fires, storms, and other property losses. These are moments where families are under significant stress and often forced to make quick decisions about their home and finances. For that reason, we support House Bill 1351 with amendments. At its core, this bill helps, Senate Bill 929, as it has been submitted. At its core, this bill helps establish clear accountability and oversight in industry that frequently operates during emergency situations. When homeowners are vulnerable, and transparency and fair prices matter even more. The provisions requiring payment to reflect the fair and reasonable value of work actually performed, along with safeguards around deductible payments and referral incentives, help protect consumers and preserve the integrity of the insurance claims process. Expanding oversight to services like water mitigation is also important, as these services often occur immediately following disaster and can unfortunately attract opportunistic actors. Responsible restoration companies already operate this way. This legislation simply ensures that those standards apply across the industry. For this reason, Thomasville Restoration strongly supports this bill, and we appreciate the committee's consideration. I just want to note that this industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is one that doesn't have oversight. And the oversight is the most important thing, ensuring that there's accountability when homeowners are entering into contracts, making sure that the contracts are right and they're going to do the right thing. And so for that reason, we are in support of this bill.
Okay, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamar Plater. I'm the COO of Thomasville Restoration, and I'm here today to talk about bad acting. And me and my wife the other day were watching television with the dog, and we were watching the television show, and we were like, wow, this is some real bad acting. So we turned the channel, right? And so, but I'm not here to talk about Tyler Perry or Robert De Niro, but I'm here to talk about sheep and sheep in wolf's clothing. So now, when me and my wife were sitting there watching TV with the dog, we had the luxury, because everything was going so smoothly, we could just take the channel and change it from the bad acting to the good acting. But when you're out there and it's a fire going on, you don't have this discernment to discern the good and the bad actors, the sheep or the sheep in the wolf's clothing. Because the sheep with the wolf with the sheep clothing, he tells you everything you want to hear, right? I'm here to help you out. Your insurance company sent me. I'm here for fire department sent me. Matter of fact, he'll even follow you all the way to the hospital behind your ambulance, because he's only out for one thing, and that's the signature. And when he got the signature, oh boy, that's when the feast begins, right? The feast begins. That's when he's going to maximize your bill as high as he possibly can. And he doesn't care if the insurance company pays for it or not, because this is a bad actor, right? He just wants to make sure he makes the most money he possibly can in the next 24 hours. And then once he does, we know that bad actors always have, guess what, good lawyers, because that's who's going to make sure he gets paid. So guess what? I stand here today as a homeowner myself, and guess what? I have parents who are sheep and daughters and sons who's going to grow up, and they're going to be sheep homeowners. You all have friends and daughters and sons. Let's protect those sheep from those bad actors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Enton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Robert Enton on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurers Association. We are in very strong support of this legislation. I want to thank the senator for sponsoring it. You know, the whole concern here is that these companies are dealing with consumers at the very moment when a consumer's home has been subject to destruction, fire, flooding, whatever it is. They show up on the doorstep right away as soon as that happens and offer to provide these services. And it's basically a system where the people that they're contracting with and dealing with are at the most vulnerable time, maybe of their lives. And there's very little protection for them. So what the bill seeks to do is offer some protection. Now, I would point out to you, if you look at the bill, you will see that if they provide this service, and if you scroll down towards the end of the legislation, you'll see that they have to require that they include the following language, which shall be initialed by the owner. And it says during the first 5 days after this contract is signed, the owner has the right to rescind the contract and be liable only for an amount not to exceed blank dollars. So it's not like they can't get paid. But what we're saying is that, you know what, I can walk away and you and I agreed that this is what I'm going to pay to you. And that seems totally fair and totally reasonable to us. The other thing I would say is that I have a copy of the contract between the homeowner and the contractor. And the contract, the homeowner assigns his or her rights to the insurance policy to the contractor. I just don't understand how that can be. So if there are changes that need to be made, fine, but we do think that there is not adequate regulation of this industry, and consumers have a need to be better protected than they are today. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Odette Ramos. I am the City Councilwoman representing District 14 in Baltimore City. One of our roles as elected officials is to be there for our residents on their worst day. And I have been there for several of my residents on their worst day as they are coming out from saving their mothers, their children, their families, their pets, and watching their houses burn down. As a matter of fact, there was one time where I was actually holding a resident crying in my arms when all of a sudden, one of these companies came to us and tapped her on the shoulder while she's with me saying, hey, we can help you. She was in a lot of trauma and yet if she wasn't with me, she would have had to be forced to figure out whether to work with this company, or that company, and still have had to recover from the trauma that she just experienced, without shoes, without blanket, in the very cold. And so what this bill does is, I also have constituents who have signed these contracts and then have had to pay and run out of insurance money at the end of the day to be able to move back into their home after the recovery. So what this bill does is it regulates this industry so that there can be complaints, that people can come out. But it also says that jurisdictions can go ahead and put in legislation to limit how this solicitation goes. And we have already done that in Baltimore City. I sponsored a bill and passed unanimously that we created a fire scene where in a disaster, the chief would create a scene. And it's not just for these contractors, it's for anybody. It's to keep people safe so that when you're in trying to deal with a fire, it's only authorized people that can go in. And it's designed to keep our residents safe, our firefighters safe, and that the firefighters are just concentrating on making sure things are safe in that zone and can let folks in after they leave. So we've been working through this, and I look forward to working with the committee and the senator to make this bill the best it can possibly be, and I look forward to your favorable report. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Egan.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Nancy Egan with the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, and you are quite aware I don't normally come here before this committee. But we are here in support of the bill with amendments. We worked with Senator Harris and the rest of the group and provided some amendments. The language about the cancellation of the contract, we actually added language that if the contract was canceled, that the contractor would receive reasonable value for the work already performed, which I think it would be very fair for that contractor. In addition, we added language about the refund of any deductible, which obviously we don't want contractors promising to refund a deductible. There is language at the end in the insurance clause about not permitting referrals We need to correct that language because it should be saying that they shouldn't be paying referrals to the policyholder. I understand contractors pay referrals to each other when performing different jobs. That's not our intent. We don't believe that they should be providing a policyholder with a fee for referrals. One of the issues that came up in the prior hearing is what we're hearing is there's a conflict between the Door-to-Door Salesman Act, which has a 3-day cooling off period, and our bill. We would like to find a way to change that language to be specific for these types of situations so that the 3-day door-to-door sales contract would not apply in those situations, especially because water mitigation companies need to get in there right away to put a tarp on that roof, start putting in the heaters and everything because of the water damage. So we would like to work with the committee to make sure that that language is added to the contract so there's not that conflict. And I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Take questions from the committee for sponsor, Senator Harris, or the 5 witnesses at the table. Okay, seeing none, thank you all.
Thank you.
We've got several additional witnesses. I'm going to call up names, all signed up in the favorable amendment category. Is Chris Logston here? Bruce Bariano. Bruce, come on up. Jen Gillis. Is Jen Gillis here? Ms. Gillis. William Carabaris. Jeff Lake. Okay, let's see if we have one more seat. We have one more witness on this bill. Jeffrey Gold. Is Mr. Gold here? Okay, I think we got 6 witnesses, six seats, 7. Okay, I think that's going to be the extent of the testimony on this piece of legislation. So we'll start with you, Mr. Bariano. You're at the podium, and each of you are going to be on the up to 2-minute clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Bruce Bariano. I'm here on behalf of Platinum Mitigation Services. You'll hear from Will Carabaris, my client, very shortly. We have a lot of problems with this bill, and what is really not understood is the situation that the overwhelming number of people that regretfully suffer these problems, these disasters, they have insurance. Either their mortgage company requires them to have insurance, or they have insurance because they want to be covered if there are any disasters. So in a situation, and you'll hear from Mr. Carabaris, he'll indicate that, when a situation arises, they immediately come on the scene. They ask if they have insurance. If they have insurance, they will ask who is your carrier. They will notify the carrier and see if they have permission to go ahead and proceed. They will have a contract where in the contract it allows the assignment of the policyholder's rights to the restoration company so that they can immediately get in there and do the restoration. There is requirements in these contracts, these mortgage contracts, that you have to mitigate the damages, get clothes out or cover things or do things in order to mitigate damages, and that is what's done. Unfortunately, there are always bad actors in whatever occupation, profession, or activity that goes on, and no one wants bad actors. But what this bill is doing is it's harming legitimate businesses, and it's not reflecting the process of what is done on a fire scene. There's a real problem with the bill. My client has filed suit against the city of Baltimore with the legislation that they have enacted. I think I'll just say finally, to allow localities to do their own thing would be really a horror show. It really would be. You are the state legislature. You've had this authority over the many years through the Maryland Insurance Administration and the Home Improvement Commission. And whatever is done should remain at the state level and not give the counties or the cities any such authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bariano. Next witness, please.
Hi, my name is Chris Logston. I'm a licensed public adjuster in the state of Maryland. A couple issues that I have with this is the right to rescind the mitigation contract. At the end of the day, the first thing that's always done on a claim is to mitigate either water extraction, tarping a roof, boarding up a house. You must take these steps to be in compliance with your insurance claim and the policy, because At the end of the day, you have to try to mitigate it as best as possible. If you don't, you run the risk of having the insurance company deny that part of the claim. Therefore, mitigation is very important. It cannot have any time limit of 3 or 4 days to actually make a decision to get started. The insurance companies will look down on the homeowner if they don't take advantage and try to mitigate the loss. Most mitigation takes 3 to 4 days total to complete the work. Therefore, I believe that we need to move forward with mitigation as fast as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logsdon. All 5 of you, or all 6 of you, are down here as favorable with amendments. If you can make sure what you're suggesting to us is clear, that would really help us. Thank you. Next witness, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeff Lake, and I'm the owner of Woodmore Cleaners. I've been in the dry cleaning industry since 1979 and the restoration business for nearly as long. When a fire strikes, the immediate focus is on extinguishing the fire and ensuring everyone's safety. But once the fire smoke clears, the real battle begins. What many people don't realize is that the sum of the same significant damage isn't always structural. It's woven into the very fabric of a home and businesses. Textiles, clothing, upholstery, drapery, bedding, shoes, purses, and specialty fabrics act like sponges during the fire. They absorb smoke, soot, acidic residues, and odor particulates until within moments. And from the moment forward, time is no longer a luxury. It's the deciding factor between restoration and replacement. Soot and smoke residues are highly corrosive. Within hours, they begin breaking down fabrics. Colors fade, whites, yellow, synthetic fabrics can permanently bond with oily residues. Natural fibers like cotton, wool, and silk can weaken and deteriorate. The longer the contaminants sit, the deeper they penetrate, the harder they are to remove. That is why professional restoration textile cleaning must begin immediately. Speed matters for another reason, cost control. Rapid inventory, pack out, and cleaning of significantly reduces insurance claim. The faster textiles are removed from the contaminated environment, the process, the higher the salvage rate. What can become a total loss can often be fully restored when handled quickly and professionally. Beyond the financial impact, there's the emotional one. Fires don't just damage property, they disrupt lives, family heirlooms, wedding dresses, baby blankets, custom draperies, and uniforms. These items carry memories. Swift textile restoration can mean the difference between preserving a lifetime of moments and losing them forever. In a fire restoration, every hour counts. Delays allow soot to set, odors to embed, fibers to degrade, costs to escalate, but quick intervention helps. So when we talk about fire restoration, we must remember it's not just about rebuilding walls, it's about restoring comfort, safety, health, and history. And that restoration begins with immediate textile cleaning. In that, I'm in favor of amendments as to what's been presented. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Jen Gillis with Environmental Contracting Solutions. I am a family-owned insurance restoration contractor that has been in business for 23 years. We specialize in rebuilding homes that have suffered significant damage from fire, flooding, and storms. We provide emergency board-ups, tarps, mitigation, and structural reconstruction, working directly with insurance carriers to restore properties safely and in compliance with building codes. Insurance carriers require detailed documentation, scope approvals, and compliance with industry standards. Scopes of work are reviewed by adjusters, and pricing is standardized through insurance estimating software. Projects are documented, approved, and funded through established insurance claim processes. Disaster restoration is not traditional home improvement work. It is emergency response work. When a family's home has just burned or flooded, immediate action is required to secure the structure, prevent further damage, mold growth, safety hazards, and begin stabilization. Delays can dramatically increase repair costs, health risks, worsen damage, and prolong displacement. In many disaster situations, homeowners don't know where to start. They are overwhelmed, stressed, displaced, and dealing with the insurance company. That is why we provide them with immediate response and guide them through the insurance and rebuilding process. Homeowners need access to reputable licensed contractors without added confusion or delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillis. Next witness, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the committee.
My name is Jeffrey Gould. I am a licensed public insurance adjuster in Maryland and many other states. This bill does not affect me, but it does have the potential to affect my clients. I am in favor of the portions of this bill requiring licensing and regulation. Like every other industry, there are good actors and there are bad actors, and the bad actors or the public should have a way to complain and have their complaints heard about the bad actors. I'm not in favor of several of the specific provisions of this bill. Every insurance policy requires, as a condition of payment, that you mitigate your loss. If you don't mitigate the loss and to prevent further damage, the insurance company could deny all or part of your claim. If a mitigation company has to give a 5-day right of rescission and does not get started right away, it could prevent unintended consequences. I'm not aware of any other industry that the right of rescission extends to after the work is complete. Mitigation is usually completed in 3 to 4 days. So you can have a company come out and do all this work on your home and then cancel the contract after. Sounds like an invitation for clogging the courts to me. Unlike another provision I don't like is having to give an estimate. Saving someone's home should not be to the lowest bidder. When somebody's home needs to be mitigated, they shouldn't have 20 contractors saying, I'll do it for this, I'll do it for that. It's impossible to know what mitigation is going to cost. You don't know where water traveled, you don't know where smoke traveled. It takes a professional to walk through your house, look at the damage, and come up with an estimate. It's not like, yeah, I want a new kitchen, and you can have 3 contractors come in and give you a bid. It doesn't happen. Allowing 24 jurisdictions to have separate rules will create a nightmare. I don't have any specific amendments to propose to solve the problem, but I can say that I've been doing this insurance work for 36 years, and I'm happy to work with the sponsor, the committee, or anyone else to discuss the issue and come up with a bill that has the licensing and for any further protection.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. Mr. Calaveras, why don't you wrap us up?
So I want to give you the parts that I would like changed, okay? First is the 3-day cooling off period. That's already in the home improvement law. The 5 days interfere with that. The next one is each county imposing a timeline, a day, a this or that. As a county, in that county, are they going to pay the homeowner's claim when they deny it for mold? All right, I'll read my speech. I've been in the business for 28 years. I'm the owner of Platinum Emergency Services and co-owner of Carabarris Restoration. I respond out to fires, floods, and other natural disasters as a restoration contractor, a licensed restoration contractor for Carabarris Restoration. Platinum Emergency Services is a mitigation company, which is ServPro, ServiceMaster, and everyone else who doesn't have an MHIC, who's been doing this forever, and you guys probably use them in your house. We respond immediately when someone's house has been damaged by fire, water loss, or any other natural disaster. Water continues to spread, smoke continues to corrode materials, and mold can begin forming quickly. That is why mitigation companies must respond quickly and begin stabilizing on the property. Every day, restoration companies are called during some of the worst moments in a homeowner's life. When someone experiences a pipe bust, fire damage, flood, they need immediate prevention. Prevent the situation from getting worse. Emergency mitigation services exist to stabilize the property, prevent additional damage, and begin recovery process as quickly as possible. One of my concerns to this bill is the provision of the 5-day rescind period for disaster mitigation contractors. Currently under the Maryland Home Improvement Commission, who does not agree with this. Okay, you need to call them and talk to them. Currently under the Maryland Home Improvement Insurance Commission Door-to-Door Sales Act, homeowners already have a 3-day cooling off period. Extending the period of 5 days creates uncertainty for contractors who must immediately mobilize crews, equipment, and drying systems to prevent further damage. These are emergency services that cannot wait days to begin. Other major concerns are allowing each county to impose its own restrictions on in-person solicitation after disaster. Restoration companies
Thank you, Mr. Calaveras. I'm afraid your time has expired. But we're glad that all of you are here because you're going to help us do our jobs. Senator Tara, why don't you kick off any questions?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Bariano, you mentioned that it will be a horror show if local governments do their own thing. So I guess I have two questions. It's kind of two parts. Baltimore City, we heard, does their own thing. Can you explain what you mean by it'll be a horror show? What's the issue with that? And then it was also mentioned, I think you mentioned that there's a pending lawsuit in Baltimore City. Can you give some background as to that or further explain?
I was very involved in that, Senator.
Okay.
We testified actively in Baltimore City against the legislation. The legislation is extremely restrictive of the work that you heard from the folks that need to come in the scene right away. Once the fire department and the police department allow them and that scene is already settled. The lawsuit's pending in the Circuit Court of Baltimore City. My client has filed it. It is based upon the fact that it is a violation of commercial free speech. Secondly, the state of Maryland has really impliedly preempted localities from legislating in this area because you have the Home Improvement Commission, you have the Maryland Insurance Administration that has for years been legislating in this subject area that we're talking about. And therefore, you have a locality coming in and what they pass is at variance with current state law, which has been in effect for about 5 to 7 years. So those are the basis of the lawsuit. We're very optimistic about it. We've also had to file a complaint with the city against Councilwoman Ramos because she's interfered, telling people not to use my client or other people and what have you. So that's pending as well. But, you know, the state legislature has for years been dealing with this area of home improvement and mitigation and stuff like that. To allow the localities to do different things, it just creates confusion. It creates, and I'm not trying to be funny in saying what I'm going to say, you've got a very emotionally confusing situation. Well, having different laws and different guidelines in different counties is going to make the matter worse. So we feel that states should be keeping that jurisdiction.
Okay, and I'm not familiar with the details of the local bill, but it doesn't mirror this legislation?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you. It's more restrictive.
It's very restrictive and does not take into account state law. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tara. Are you complete? Are you good? Okay. Senator Brooks, I see that you have a question. Since Councilmember Odette Ramos's name was invoked, is there anything you want to briefly add or clarify? Or are you good?
What, did I want to? Oh, that.
Council member, if you're good, only if you just because there was allegation of a legal issue. I'm fine. You're fine. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Madam Vice Chair. I'm looking at the bill, page 6. The provision, this could be for anyone. The provision in the bill that gives a price to the homeowners and allowing a time frame time period for rescission. How does that affect your business, if any, if at all? And then, you know, what would be, you know, how would you address that? Because this does seem like there is on line 7, an amount to be calculated that gives you an option. So,
Senator, if I could kindly answer that, you have a contract. In other words, the mitigation company comes on the scene. They ask the person that owns the property, do you have insurance? They tell you if they have insurance. If they have insurance, and the overwhelming majority have insurance, then you immediately contact the insurance company, even if it's in the middle of the night, and you get authorization that they have insurance. In other words, you verify they have insurance, and then this contract is given to them for them to sign, assigning their ability for us as an agent to work with the insurance company to immediately deal with this situation. We get paid by the insurance company. That's what you have insurance for. So that whole process is contrary to the process in the bill. In other words, when most people have insurance, they are dealing with the insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier is going to ultimately pay what needs to be done for mitigation. So the notion of a 5-day rescission by the person and putting an amount is really contrary to the fact that they have insurance.
Okay.
And that the insurance company is committed to deal with the situation in the case of a disaster.
Thank you, Mr. Bariano. Mr. Calaveras, looked like you had some expertise you wanted to add briefly in this, and then I think
yeah,
we're
so-
almost ready to move on.
Yep. Basically, when you go in to do a mitigation job, depending on what a fire, flood, whatever it is, you go in. There's maybe 4 feet of water in there. You have to clean that up before you get to the next step. Then you have to find out where the water went. Track it down. That may take a few hours. So now you're actually in the process. You got to do the work. The insurance companies, as we all know, they're only going to pay what they owe, and it's hard to get that out of them. All right, so they're not paying nothing extra. I can tell you that, and I'm sure they'll all testify to it. And everything's done per Xactimate, which everyone in this room and everyone that testified uses the same exact software. And everyone in this room and everyone that's testified has the same exact contract, maybe a little bit different wording, but it's the same exact thing. There's no difference between one mitigation company and the other one. All homeowners, whether the insurance company sends you out or whether you go solicit them on your own. I believe this bill is something to kind of have homeowners just have to deal with someone that the insurance company sends out, which is also not legal. It's called steering. All right, the homeowner should have the option to use whomever they want, a professional, whenever they need them. Right? It shouldn't be, just deal with this guy because so and so Nationwide told you to use them. Right? So this is about big businesses and small businesses. I feel. I've been in business for 28 years. I've been doing it every single day of my life. And I've been in some of these politicians' homes, churches, all over the place. They love our services. They're needed 24 hours a day. It never stops.
Thank you, Mr. Calaveras. Senator Brooks, are you good? Okay. I see no other questions. Thanks to all the panelists and to Senator Harris for your testimony on Senate Bill 929. Back to the chair.
3 more bills, and they're all from Senator Hester. So we're going to start. Senator Hester, do you have any preference on sequence or just go in chronological order? Okay, let's start with Senate Bill 596. I'm going to call up you've designated 4 folks to be on your sponsor panel: Mariah Davis, Matthew Katz, Jamie DeMarco, and Mr. William Fields, OPC. And then we'll take additional witnesses after that, but these are your designated sponsor panelists on Senate Bill 596. The floor is yours, Senator Hester, on Senate Bill 596.
Chair Feldman, members of the committee, I'm here to present Senate Bill 598, the Securing Affordable, Valuable Investments in Next Generation.
596, not 598. 598 will be next. Start with 596.
I guess we're all a bit tired, right? Thanks for your indulgence, committee. I am still Senator Katie Hester, but I'm actually here to present Senate Bill 596, the Large Load Customer Demand Response Program. As this committee knows all too well, data center growth is contributing to our growing energy issues, and this bill is about helping to solve that problem. As I said earlier, we need to attract data centers that are infrastructure aligned, ratepayer neutral, and responsible. You guys have probably seen this chart before as well. This came out of the SIP process that I was involved with at PJM. And looking forward, there is potentially 32 gigawatts of energy across the entire PJM region that is expected. And paying for all of that could cost $163 billion. And what that could, if nothing else is done, that could correlate to $70 per month on everybody's residential energy bill. And that is if nothing changes. But we've been working really hard at the PJM level to try to get that under control. But what this bill does is it's part of the solution. And so if you think, I really like this analogy. If you think about how we build the grid, historically it's built to provide firm power 100% of the time. And that's kind of like we built every single church for Easter Sunday, right? We're going to fit everybody in all the time. And if we did that, we'd wind up with a lot of churches that were just too darn big. And so when we think about the peak, that's what we're doing with the grid. We're building it for that Easter Sunday scenario. But actually, there was a recent study done by the Nicholas Institute at Duke University that said, hey, if we can actually allow ourselves to be a little more flexible and not necessarily build for the peak, then we will be able to save a whole lot of money in that process. So what we're talking about here is the headroom capacity, and this is the available energy, the power that we could use right now without building the new power plants if we agreed to be more flexible during those peak events, those points that cause the grid stress. And the study went on to show that if we were able to be flexible 10% of the time during that peak demand, that's equivalent to 0.25 to 1% of those peak hours, about 85 to 87 hours a year. That's the equivalent to unlocking 76 gigawatts of additional energy. The study goes on to show that actually within the PJM region, and Maryland in particular, we have a lot of this headroom capacity. Actually, there's 18 gigawatts there available at just 0.05% curtailment, so less than 1%. There's just significant underutilized transmission and generation capacity if we're allowed to be flexible. And so what this bill does is it tries to connect the economic strengths, in this available headroom with reliability planning. So what exactly are we talking about? For just 0.25% curtailment of that peak load, which is approximately 22 hours per year, 1% would be about 86 hours, we could unlock the 76 gigawatts of new capacity, 10% of the total U.S. peak demand. Now, if we were going to ask data centers to help us with this peak, how could they do it? Most of the really big data centers will say, we need firm capacity 100% of the time. But they're starting to explore with this because they see the economic benefit as well. And there's 3 ways they could do it. The first is temporal shifting. They could delay batch processing tasks like AI training and shift it to off-peak hours. That's the first way. Spatial shifting is another mode that some data centers are beginning to look at. Moving data center load from centers in regions where there is grid stress to regions where there is less grid stress. And finally, cooling adjustments. Those could be reduced, during times of peak demand. Okay, so with that background, now we know what we're talking about. What does Senate Bill 596 actually do? It tries to attract those data centers to Maryland that are willing to be flexible. And it accomplishes this in 4 ways. It establishes a voluntary demand response program. We work on identifying the surplus interconnection capacity, and that is internet connection capacity at our generators that is not currently being used, and then figuring out how to prioritize those projects so that the ones that need the capacity can be connected to the surplus interconnection. And finally, the 4th part of the bill is establishing a community benefit fee. So the incentive in this bill is flexibility or the fast lane. So if you're going, if the status quo is that when data centers come and they want to get 100% firm power, this might trigger transmission and distribution upgrades and they have to wait in the queue. What this bill proposes is that if they're requesting flexible power and they can fit within that headroom and just have their own capacity or be willing to be curtailed for 0.25 to 1%, then they can have that accelerated connection. This slide just explains surplus interconnection. You can basically read it yourself. But this does exist, and what the bill contemplates is having MEA provide this matching service between the surplus interconnection that exists and the data centers that are coming. The community benefit fee would be determined by the PSC. In the bill states it would be not less than 1,000 megawatts for large load entities, and about half of that would go to Empower Maryland to Limited Income Energy Efficiency Program at DHCD, and the other half would go to the Office of Home Energy Programs at 50% there to their Electric Universal Service Program. So the question I know many of you would like to ask is, who is already doing this? There are 3 examples in that Duke report that I mentioned. The first one, is Google, and they are deploying carbon-aware temporal shifting currently in one of their locations. The second example is from Texas. They've actually established a large load task force, which is working on this process. And the third example is PG&E. They've debuted a Flex and Connect to provide quicker interconnection on return for the flexibility. So basically what this bill wants to do. So I just think that there's a major opportunity for Maryland to lead the East Coast by formalizing these standards. And with that, I would turn it over to my panel and then pause for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, do you have a preference on sequence or not? These are your panelists, so you decide.
Do you guys have a preference? I just go straight down the line, but I do want to note, Mr. Chair, that Matt Katz, who's testifying today, is an intern in my office. He is a grad student at Johns Hopkins University in energy policy, and it's just been super fun to have him here, and this is the first time he's testifying in the Senate of Maryland.
All right. Okay, expectations are very, very high. I know you are. Okay, Mr. Fields, why don't you start, and we'll take it from there, okay? Everybody's going to be on the 2-minute clock.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. William Fields for the Office of People's Counsel here to testify in support of Senate Bill 596. Data centers have city-sized power demands that break the paradigm of utility regulation. Historically, electric load growth has occurred gradually across all customer classes and geographical areas. Data center load growth is an entirely different animal, and it's occurring faster than regulation can keep up with. As a result, Maryland residential customers are bearing data center costs in the form of higher transmission, energy, and capacity prices. Utility regulation must catch up. Senate Bill 596 helps address the regulatory gaps that leave residential customers vulnerable to data center energy demands. The best solution for protecting residential customers is for data centers to provide their own new generation capacity that is local to the data center. That is a solution our office has been advocating for at the regional level. Senate Bill 596 significantly advances that solution for the data centers located in Maryland. Applicable to data centers with loads of 25 megawatts or more, Senate Bill 596 would have the PSC create an interconnection queue for connecting data centers to the system and require all data centers to supply at least 25% of their own capacity, and it incentivizes data centers to bring even more of their own generation. For data centers that bring less than all of their load in new generation, the bill facilitates reductions in energy demands during peak hours that will reduce the need for infrastructure investments and help protect residential customers from subsidizing data centers. Finally, we applaud the bill's requirement that data centers pay a fee to provide much-needed support for the Electric Universal Service Fund and low-income energy efficiency programs. We ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's just go down the aisle. Tell us who you are.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of this committee. I'm Mariah Davis. I'm a contractor with Nature Forward. We recently started a new coalition called Marylanders for Data Center Reform. We're very concerned about the impacts that data centers are having on communities and the environment, and we urge a favorable report for this bill. We support this bill because it offers near-term solutions to the challenges that we're seeing from data center development through demand response while adding clean, new capacity to the grid. As pressure from AI and electrification grows, it's imperative that we're using the best available research to provide power to data centers that have the least damage and long-lasting impacts to communities and to the environment. Utility scale solar and battery storage are not only underutilized, they're the cheapest and fastest ways to provide reliability to the grid. And this bill incentivizes all of those sources of generation. If data centers bring their own power, it should include carbon-free generation. This bill encourages that and provides at least that 25% of their capacity load through carbon-free means, which is also great for ratepayers. Our coalition prioritizes people and the environment. Last month, the state supported new PJM reforms to address data center load growth, but we're very concerned that these new policies will also impact environmental justice communities. These rules created a fast-track process that excludes clean energy projects and gives special treatments to fossil fuel power plants. Low-cost generation has been waiting too long to connect to the grid. This coupled with Maryland's critical infrastructure streamlining law, which eased regulatory restrictions on diesel backup generators, is a recipe for public health concerns. More than 20 data centers are currently being proposed in the state, and a majority of them are located in underserved and overburdened communities. According to MDE's environmental justice screen, there's a proposed 300 megawatt data center in Landover, Maryland that has an EJ score of 96. So if you care about environmental justice communities, then you should also care about this bill. We urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, the aforementioned Mr. Katz.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Katz, and I'm a graduate student at Johns Hopkins University's Energy Policy and Climate Program and a legislative intern with Senator Hester's office. As an intern, I work to elevate the voices of constituents. Last month, I took notes on a Montgomery County community forum on data centers, where the vast majority of constituents were very concerned about data center growth in Maryland. They worried that the cost of new transmission and grid expansion for these facilities would be shifted to ratepayers, and that electricity demand from new data centers will contribute to continuously higher energy prices. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, average monthly residential electricity prices in Maryland have increased by almost 54% since 2020. SB 596 addresses these issues by providing responsible and incentive-based solutions for large load facilities. This bill initiates the study of surplus interconnection to expand new generation, establishes a minimum level of data center capacity to be sourced from behind-the-meter storage, demand response, and/or purchases from newly interconnected battery storage and carbon-free generation, enacts a priority path for large load facilities that can provide 100% of their capacity, authorizes the Maryland Public Service Commission to create a voluntary demand response program to address large load customer demand during peak hours, and increase funding for state energy programs through a community benefit fee on new data center load. Together, these actions will internalize the cost of data center expansion and allow Maryland's grid to be operated in a modern and more efficient manner, because grid reliability isn't just about keeping the lights on, it is about being fair and reliable protector of ratepayer well-being. I ask for a favorable vote on SB 596.
Thank you, Mr. Katz. Okay, Mr. DeMarco.
Very well done. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the EEE Committee, my name is Jamie DeMarco. On behalf of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we urge a favorable report. I also want to just thank Senator Hester for all of her terrific work on data centers. She's really gone above and beyond mastering the material and developing really some of the best in the nation policies to bring to your committee. So thank you, Senator Hester. And I want to emphasize that this is a bill that is not overly burdensome of data centers. The sponsors in both chambers are working closely with the data centers to make sure that this isn't going to deter any from coming to Maryland. We want to make sure they're being good grid citizens, but we also want to make sure if they're going to get built, they aren't just being built in our neighboring states. And so you'll notice that there was a data center company that testified favorable in the House. They weren't able to make it today. Both Google and Amazon take no position on this bill. You won't see them coming in unfavorable. There are some trade associations that came in unfavorable, but some of the actual biggest data center developers themselves do not oppose this bill because they are working closely with the sponsors to make sure that it is something that is going to benefit everybody. I also just want to emphasize the tremendous cost savings of shifting load away from peaked. And that specifically looks like not having to build new transmission lines or power plants that we would otherwise have to build in order to meet peak demand. And so shifting just even a little bit away from the peak demand into that headroom, that great graphic we saw earlier of all that wide open headroom 90% of the year, shifting a little bit can mean we don't have to build a new transmission line. It can mean we don't have to build a new power plant to meet that peak demand. Thank you for your time. We urge a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon, committee. Philip Scrange on behalf of AES Clean Energy. AES is one of the largest independent power producers, and we provide more power purchase agreements to technology companies than any other company worldwide, including in that 2 gigawatts of renewable energy, which we developed in Virginia, just across the river, which primarily supplies data centers and technology customers on that side. A couple of highlights in this bill, some things that are really good about it. I want to really point to the fact that it is tech neutral, meaning that although it is primarily directed to data centers, you can see that it is defined by the load and the load factor in the bill. I think that that's really important to remain tech neutral. I also want to highlight that the expedited interconnection process is absolutely essential for these companies and for companies like ours when we're doing either generation or load. Figuring out our interconnection timing is one of the most important aspects of a new project coming online. So those are really the 2 things that are really exciting about this bill. I also want to encourage you, as the bill continues to move through the process, really take a look at some of the ratepayer protection statements that these large companies have made, even in the last couple of days. I would look at the White House came out with a ratepayer protection argument that is really positive and we think is very much in line with what this is trying to do, make sure that data centers are paying their own way. And most of all, flexibility is really key, providing as much flexibility as possible as the Public Service Commission works through this process to make sure that data centers are able to develop and do it the right way. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take questions for the sponsor, Senator Hester, or 5 witnesses at the table. Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you to the entire panel. I'm going to move to several witnesses who said, well, I'm just going to call them up, favorable with amendment. And then we also have 1 virtual witness from the Public Service Commission, Mr. Baker. Okay, so Roger Manna. Raj, come on up here, former state senator. Signed up favorable with amendments. Spencer Rhoda, favorable with amendments. Alex Pavlak. Alex, you can come back up. You're signed up for information purposes, but let's just take you. And then the final witness on the bill will be Mr. Baker, who we're going to take virtually. He's in the queue, correct? Okay. So, Senator Mano, you've got up to 2 minutes, and you're signed up favorable to amendments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Roger Mano, attorney at Mano and Associates. On behalf of the Mid-Atlantic Pipe Trades Association and its some 27,000 members in the Mid-Atlantic states and across the country, those represented by Sprinkler Fitters 669, Plumbers and Gas Fitters Local 5, Steam Fitters Local 602, Plumbers and Steam Fitters Local 486, as well as their signatory contractors represented by the Mechanical Contractors Association of Metro Washington, which represents 200 signatory contractors to the UA or the Mid-Atlantic Pipe Trades, including contractors, subcontractors, tool manufacturers like Milwaukee and DeWalt. Other clients that are stakeholders here that I am representing are the Ironworkers District Council of the Mid-Atlantic States, the Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, and others. Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, We appreciate the great work that this committee has done on this issue, advancing the cause of data centers. You know, just let me say very briefly, this state has not seen an economic or job creation or revenue opportunity like data centers in at least several generations. The opportunity is exquisite. It's rare. It's, I would caution, extremely fleeting. And while we are supportive of this bill, we support the bill with amendments to strengthen the ability of the state to actually attract data centers rather than chase them into other states, surrounding states. Notably, the provision of the bill that requires interconnection on reimbursing the grid with a 25% load requirement. Other requirements we think are onerous. I wouldn't say are punitive, but I would say are onerous, and we would hope that they are resolved through appropriate amendments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Rhoda, you're up next, and you're on the 2-minute clock.
I'm Spencer Rhoda. I'm a delegate candidate for 9A. I think that it's important to address this bill, and Senator Hester, I commend you for doing so. It's kind of been a mishmash and not much of a plan with relation to data centers for our state, and people are starting to take notice. So part of this calls for a fee that data centers will pay in order to get this energy, but let's be clear, they're getting this energy from our PJM grid. Now, the PJM grid is already overloaded to the extent that we have former coal-fired plants that are on a must-run, reliability must-run basis. And some of those plants, you know, Constellation or Talon rather just announced they're taking Brandon Shores off the first moment that they can do so. We have an energy crisis right now that it's going to be exacerbated in just a few years. So there's two reasons for this crisis that we're in right now. Number one is legislation and taking all these coal and fossil fuel power plants offline. If you look at the PJM grid, 40+% of Maryland's energy comes from gas-fired power plants out of state. We need to have that production here in our state. And the other, obviously, is data centers and that demand that's caused, you know, an unfathomable amount of energy consumption that 10 years ago we couldn't have predicted. But here we are now, we're saying, okay, Virginia and Dominion Energy has 40 gigawatts of requests to do data centers in Northern Virginia. Is that going to potentially drive up the cost and the difficulty of getting energy in our state? Absolutely, yes, it is, and we need to do something about it right now. And the lens with which this bill was created is a clean, green energy initiative lens. And if you just look at it objectively, there's one solution, and it's gas-fired power plants. We can use gas now as a bridge to a nuclear future by charging data centers a fee to consume the energy that we're going to produce for them.
Okay, thank you. We do only have one additional witness. Can we just get Mr. Baker in from the PSC, and then we'll be done with the witnesses. Then let's take some questions. So, Mr. Baker, we're going to try to pull you. He's on there. Okay. Okay, you're here only for information. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you, Mr. Pavlak, okay? Let's take Mr. Pavlak, then we'll take Mr. Baker, then we'll take questions from the committee. So, Mr. Pavlak, why don't you proceed? I apologize.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Roger, could you give Mr. Alex the mic? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alex Pavlak. I'm a PhD engineer from Smyrna Park and the chairman of the Future of Energy Initiative. My testimony today is informational, addressing a distant vision. What is the simplest and cheapest way to power data centers when they become really big? 2 years ago, we began a data center study. Our main conclusion is clear. Eventually, we will not have a single integrated power system. Eventually, we're going to have, it's in everyone's best interest to have two separate systems. One architecture will be a refined version of the legacy power grid, thousands of generators with millions of widely distributed small loads. The requirement is low cost and reasonable reliability. The second architecture will be huge, off-the-grid, 10-gigawatt scale nuclear energy complexes. They'll be located where you have environmentally acceptable cooling, Off the grid eliminates the need for transmission and distribution. Dedicated generator simplifies exceptional reliability. These data centers require 5 nines reliability, which is substantially greater than what is available on the traditional grid. Co-location enables these generators and load to be integrated with each other. And Maryland is in a unique strategic position because of the existence of the Chesapeake Bay and Cove Point. This testimony is informational. SB 596 should not interfere with this vision, and I don't think it does. My written testimony has links to the concept study and a video summary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll go to Mr. Baker, signed up on behalf of the Public Service Commission for information purposes. Why don't we take your testimony, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ben Baker on behalf of the Maryland Public Service Commission. Thank you for letting me do this virtual today. This legislation is addressing the pressing concern of integrating large loads to the grid, predominantly data centers, and how we can minimize those costs and reliability concerns that go with it. If this bill is to go forward, we do seek amendments. These amendments would help clarify some of the definitions and also clarify that the onus would be on the utilities subject to the commission's oversight in terms of how these programs would be operated. Additionally, there was some concerns that there was a CPCN exemption in the bill regarding energy storage, but today energy storage does not require CPCNs, and we also seek for that to be removed as well. With that, I'm available for questions, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take questions, starting with the sponsor of the bill, Senator Hester.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Mano. Can you clarify the part of the bill that you're most anxious about? Because I do believe that that is being amended out.
The part that requires interconnection to be conditioned upon a percentage, right?
Yes, so that part is being amended out.
Okay, great.
So all the bill does now is it provides a fast track for data centers that meet the certain, requirements outlined in the bill. So any data center who doesn't want to do that doesn't have to. The mandatory thing is out. It's purely an incentive for the types of flexible data centers we want to come to Maryland.
Oh, thank you, Senator.
So hopefully you'll remove your opposition.
We look forward to working with the committee to fix this bill. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Okay, additional questions for this panel or virtual witness? Okay, seeing none, I think that's going to conclude the bill here on Senate Bill 596. Senator Hester, we're going to turn to the next bill on the list of Hester bills, Senate Bill 598. And we've designated some sponsor panelists on this one, and I'm going to call them up. There are 3. Katie Mettle. Is Katie up here? Katie Mettle. And Jamie DeMarco. Sean Kelly. Okay, there are additional witnesses, but those are your 3 sponsor panelists, and therefore we will start there, okay? Well, if you don't mind, is Jennifer Bevan Dangle here? She's signed up straight favorable, and I think it would be just good to get her up here if she's here.
I think she told me she might not be able to make it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we'll turn back to you, Senator Hester.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. Senator Katie Frey-Hester here to talk and present Senate Bill 598, the Securing Affordable Valuable Investments in Next Generation Grid Solutions, or the Savings Act. Put simply, the Savings Act is designed to lower the distribution portion of our electricity bills by encouraging cost-effective grid upgrades. As Maryland continues to electrify our homes and transportation, electrification of transportation and prepares for future load growth, it's critical that critical infrastructure investments are made efficiently to protect our ratepayers. Transmission and distribution are a significant part of your electricity bill. You all know that. And obviously with increased electrification, such as switching from gas furnaces to heat pumps, it's critical that we ensure necessary upgrades are done as effectively as possible. This slide just shows you some of the distribution rates. between 2010 and 2025. During the same period, inflation, colleagues, went up about 50%, but the distribution rates went up almost twice that much. You'll notice on this chart that BG&E, DPL, and PEPCO all went up over 100% during that same time. And this was just on the distribution portion of the grid, of the bill. You can see here that the total electricity supply and the transmission and distribution that show up on your bill are both substantial parts. And this piece of legislation is designed specifically to bring down the transmission and distribution portion of the rates that we all pay. So big picture, what does the Savings Act do? Basically, it creates a structured planning process that requires electric utilities to submit cost containment plans to the Public Service Commission every 3 years. These plans to contain costs are designed to ensure grid upgrades are delivered efficiently, coordinate existing programs, and demonstrate measurable progress on peak demand reduction. Specifically, the bill requires that utilities reduce their peak load by at least 20% from 2025 levels by 2030. And there is an amendment coming that will talk to this specific target. The Commission retains the authority to approve, deny, or conditionally approve the plans to ensure accountability. The cost containment plans are intended to complement the electric system planning work developed by the Commission. The PSC just completed the regulations following the work group on distribution system planning, and the outputs from that distribution planning will inform the cost containment plans. The requirement that the Commission approve or deny the cost containment plans gives more teeth to these electric system planning. And we're currently discussing amendments with the PSC so that they have the option, should they choose to incorporate the CCPs into the ESP or vice versa, as they best see fit. So the question that I had asked actually myself when I was drafting the bill and working with the advocates was, why is the plan tied to peak load? And by necessity, as I mentioned earlier today, that our transmission and distribution systems are designed to meet the peak load. And it's driven by those very small number of hours at the top tail of the duration curve that causes the system stress. These few hours drive the infrastructure costs, capacity payments, and long-term capital investments. And by clipping these, you unlock most of the potential. So what are the technologies that are available to reduce peak demand? I mean, these are the technologies we've talked a lot about. On the grid side, you've got high-performance conductors. You've also got grid-enhancing technologies, and we've had many bills and discussions about those. On the customer side, we're talking about technologies that manage how much electricity a customer is using, smart thermostats, smart appliances, managing EV charging. We're also talking about customer-sided distributed generation, battery storage. You guys all get the idea. And so what is our potential to actually reduce peak demand? Here's just two examples, one of direct load control and one of rooftop solar. And I think that both of these are options. The bill isn't prescriptive, but there are just many different ways that the electric utilities could reduce peak demand. I also wanted to include some examples of how other states are addressing this issue. The first one is from Con Edison. They were able to defer $1.2 billion worth of substation investments by implementing a portfolio of solutions. NYSERDA, the New York Department of Public Service, they implemented another portfolio of solutions to result in $2.9 billion in annual savings by 2040. The Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, they have leveraged demand flexibility, energy efficiency, and virtual power plants to reduce peak demand 4.5 gigawatts by 2040. And that could save customers almost $1 billion by 2040 and $5 billion by 2050. So colleagues, these are some big numbers we're talking about if we're able to get it working here in the state of Maryland. In closing, before I turn over to my panel, I just wanted to say that we must do everything possible this year to bring down costs. This solution can be implemented quickly using these advanced energy technologies, and it reduces infrastructure costs and also will help to lower the wholesale energy prices because we won't be buying for those limited number of hours that are so expensive. We absolutely need a clear, quantified goal with a firm deadline because right now the PSC doesn't have anything to judge the current electric system planning of distribution by, and this bill sets that clear goal. And finally, by definition, a cost containment plan will only be approved by the PSC if it demonstratably contains cost. With that, I would ask for your favorable support of the bill and turn it over to my panel.
Okay, Ms. Meadow, why don't you start? We'll start with you, and each of you be on the up to 2 o'clock.
Hello, Triple E. Hello, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair. My name is Katie Metal, and I am the Maryland Policy Principal for Advanced Energy United. Between 2010 and 2025, as you just saw, inflation was 49%. But BGE's distribution rates increased 100%, Delmarva's increased 125%, and Pepco's increased 154%. In all three territories, the average household will spend about as much on electricity supply as they will on transmission and distribution. The utilities may tell you that because of aging infrastructure and projected increases in load growth, those capital expenditures were painfully necessary, and that we can expect that need to continue. That is all the more reason to make sure that going forward, we make improvements as cost effectively as possible. Deploying advanced energy technologies can help us avoid more expensive capital expenditures. As Senator Hester just discussed, my favorite example is Con Edison in New York. They deferred a $1.2 billion substation by instead implementing advanced energy solutions that lowered peak demand. And by 2017, they had managed to spend only $70 million. A study that Advanced Energy United commissioned showed that across the PJM region, if we roughly double the amount of advanced energy technologies, including large-scale renewables and battery, we can offset projected load growth from data centers, reduce peak load 22% by 2035, and save $178 billion, which is roughly equal to the world's 5th richest person's net worth. We have been engaging with PSC, OPC, and MEA to develop a collaborative set of amendments. We have had many constructive conversations, and I'm very optimistic that we will complete this work very soon. We can get more bang for our buck as ratepayers. The Savings Act framework will create the accountability that we need to ensure that utilities are upgrading the grid as cost effectively as possible. We respectfully request a favorable report, and thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Sean Kelly. I'm a Senior Director of Regulatory Policy for Advanced Energy United. In my career, which has pretty much all been in utility regulation, I've worked for 2 different state public service commissions and 2 gas and electric utilities. I'd like to first thank Senator Hester for her leadership and also the great overview of what the Savings Act does and why it's needed. Rather than being redundant, I'd like to give you a sneak peek of some of the opposition you're likely to hear on this bill after our panel. The utilities will likely start off by telling you how much they care about their customers and how they empathize with the households struggling to pay their electricity bills. They'll present you with some big numbers, all while ignoring important context that the benefits of a cost containment plan would greatly outweigh the cost. Now, as a former utility worker who still has a lot of friends in that industry, I would actually say I want to take them on that claim that they care about their customers because I truly do believe it. But I also think we need to look at the reality that electricity distribution rates of the investor-owned utilities in Maryland have gone up on average of 6% every year since 2010. So you might ask yourself, if they do care about their customers, why would they can't oppose cost containment plans? And I think it's also important to note that with a financial incentive that rewards the utilities for building expensive infrastructure, that without a paradigm change, they won't do this on their own. And that's why we believe they need this legislative push and why I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 598. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for testimony. Mr. DeMarco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the EEE Committee. My name is Jamie DeMarco, and on behalf of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we urge a favorable report on the bill. I would like to say that we have heard on the previous bill that reducing peak demand has tremendous savings. Again, avoiding major upgrades that would be a lot more expensive than these low-cost easy to deploy technologies. Utilities don't always reach for these technologies first because the more expensive the capital project, the greater their profits will be to their shareholders. So requiring them to move forward with plans to deploy these technologies as much as possible is going to have a lot of net benefits to customers. A Brattle study from New York State showed that if New York State deployed advanced energy solutions to lower their peak demand just 24%, they would save the state $2.4 billion annually in reduced costs. This is very similar to a very successful program that was created in 2008 that set out to reduce Maryland's per capita electricity demand by 15% in 7 years. That was the Empower program, and it succeeded. It reduced demand beyond its goals. It reduced demand by 2,500 megawatts. That's about 2 to 3 large nuclear power plants, and saved ratepayers $4.4 billion. Again, for every dollar we've invested in power, we've gotten $2.2 back in benefits. This similarly would be investing in energy efficiency, low-cost programs to avoid having to pay for much larger and more expensive grid infrastructure. Thank you, and we urge a favorable report.
We're going to take questions, starting with Senator Gallion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just trying to, this is a complex issue, as you very well know, just trying to wrap my head around some of this. So I guess this would require a lot of like battery storage units. I guess that would be a major part of making this work. How does that relate price-wise to what is like now? I guess would be the alternative, be like more transmission lines or actually producing more through gas or whatever. So price-wise, what is the most efficient there?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for that
Or
question.
cost-wise, rather.
I'm not sure I can answer that exactly with like exact numbers on that, but I did want to point out that it's not just energy storage, right? It's a combination. We're intentionally trying to make this non-prescriptive. So it's up to the utilities to find these solutions and present them. So in a situation where battery storage did replace the need for an infrastructure build out, in no scenario, if that was more expensive, would that pass through the commission's approval process. So I know that didn't answer your exact question, but hopefully that helps.
Okay, and one other thing, you know, when I was reading in the fiscal note about the peak load reduction goals, what does that look like? Is that, so would consumers like somehow be encouraged to like run their washer and dryers at night instead of the day? I mean, how would that work effectively for actually the, you know, what's that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one of the options would be shifting consumption to less costly time periods. So in other words, away from that peak demand period. And the customers, we call them participants, would be paid for those actions, whether it's, and I should say compensated, and whether that's through a time of use rate or encouraged and discharge their energy storage during those times.
Well, the customers be paid for that. That sounds a lot better to me than, it's kind of in a way reminding me when I first hear of peak load reduction goals, remind me of Jimmy Carter in the 70s, you know, having everybody wear sweaters, which concerns me. So the fact that we could be, you know, paid would be a benefit. So thank you.
Okay, additional questions for the panel? Okay, thank you, Senator Hester, and thank you to the panel. I'm going to call up a panel of unfavorables next. Okay, Di, Reed, let's come from BGE. Di, would you come up here? Ann Clace from Pepco, Delmelva Power. And then is John Burkowski here from the Public Service Commission. You're here for information purposes. Why don't you just come up to the panel because you're on the list. And then Ethan Holmes from BGE as well. Is Ethan here? Okay. Okay, so we'll take our information purpose from PSC last. So okay, Di, why don't you go first, then we'll go to Ann Clace. We'll end up with our PSC testimony. Okay, and this is an unfavorable panel with one information only testimony from the PSC.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tanya Reed Lipscomb, State Affairs Manager for BGE. I do have with me Ethan Holmes, who is a manager on our strategy team. We are here in opposition to Senate Bill 598. And so I will state first, BGE does care about our customers. We are concerned about lowering the energy costs. However, as a utility, we are obligated to balance providing safe and reliable service to our customers. And so the distribution rates for BGE have increased over the years. However, that is because we've made great and sustained investments in our grid system to modernize and enhance the services that we're able to provide. And these investments have produced top-tier reliability results. BGE has been ranked nationally 4th amongst the nation. And so if you've seen our last winter storm results, we had record responsiveness and low outages. And so for Senate Bill 598, we oppose the bill for several reasons. It's described as a reporting and cost containment measure. However, it goes beyond that. Specifically, the peak demand reductions with the 20% threshold, it'll be an absorbent cost. For context, the DRIVE Act requires a 2% reduction, which is projected to cost $89 million statewide. Now, and I'm not bringing that example up to underscore that the alternative solutions are already being deployed by utilities. Also, it's being evaluated by the current electric system planning process. And that brings me to my next point. The state of Maryland has an electric system planning process that went into effect through the 2024 Electric System Planning Act with the regulations that were passed and took effect 4 months ago. And through that, there have been 170 stakeholders who have been invited to participate. All have resolved some of these open issues that the bill purports to address. Lastly, I'd also like to point out that the Empower program that was referenced, the savings that were quoted, it took 10 years to produce. This bill requires us to meet those peak demand thresholds and reductions within 4 years. Also, the Brattle study that was referenced specifically for New York, that target deadline is by 2040. And so it's not a one-to-one comparison. And so I just wanted to share that information. Also, if you look at the fiscal note for this bill, it says that it'll take about $1.7 million to implement this bill. So for various reasons, we oppose this. Thank you.
Okay, let's stick with BG. Mr. Holmes, go next.
He's here for technical.
Oh, just for technical. Okay, how about you, Ms. Clace?
Yep. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Ann Clace on behalf of PEPCO and Delmarva Power in opposition to Senate Bill 598. While we share Maryland's clean energy goals, this legislation imposes a mandate that is costly and duplicative it duplicates existing regulations. This legislation mandates a 20% reduction in peak load by 2030. For PEPCO and Delmarva Power, this represents nearly 950 megawatts of capacity, over 740 megawatts for PEPCO and more than 210 megawatts for Delmarva Power. While it is possible to produce such ambitious load reductions, the cost of such an initiative are enormous and would be borne by our customers. For battery storage alone, the battery units themselves would cost an estimated $492 million. Additionally, this legislation conflicts with Maryland's distribution system planning regulations. These, as Di mentioned, the regulations went into effect just 4 months ago after 3 years of stakeholder work. Finally, it's critical to recognize that Maryland does not have jurisdiction over bulk transmission assets. PHI's transmission system is operated entirely under PJM authority. Even if PHI invested in sufficient distributed resources to achieve a 20% reduction, the state cannot require how and whether those resources are dispatched. So we look forward to continuing conversations with all stakeholders. We hope that we will be involved in those stakeholder conversations, but for the reasons stated at this time, we respectfully request an unfavorable report on Senate Bill 598.
Okay, let's get some Public Service Commission informational testimony on the record. Mr. Prokosky.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan and the members of the committee. My name is John Borkowski. I'm a senior advisor at the Public Service Commission. And the aforementioned COMAR regulations did become effective in 2025. And this current regulation framework mandates an ongoing iterative planning cycle through annual stakeholder conferences and plan submissions. Now, while the Savings Act focuses on managing load growth and containing cost, its requirements can be integrated into that planning framework, but we would need several amendments. To ensure that the Act's goals are met efficiently, the Commission requested discretion to approve or modify utility proposed goal targets for tapering or containing load growth that are supported by detailed analytical justifications regarding the benefit cost, rather than having a rigid legislatively mandated goal. And the Commission has also proposed other changes regarding plan approvals so we can avoid fully litigated evidentiary hearings. The Commission also requests integrating the new cost containment plans into the existing schedule for electric system plans and proposes the initial submissions begin in 2028 to allow time for the necessary regulation development and also utility preparation to integrate these new requirements. So in conclusion, the Commission is created to continually improving a strong, transparent, and integrated electric system planning process that's in line with our state's climate and energy goals. But we do request the ability to make decisions on some of the implementation details and have flexibility to accommodate the diverse operational needs of our utilities.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to start with the sponsor, Senator Hester, with questions.
Yes, I just want to start by thanking the PSC. We've probably had 2 meetings a week for the last 3 weeks and lots of conversations with Mr. Burkowski. We are working on amendments that, that he articulated, and those amendments will I think, bring down the fiscal note and also address the issue of the goal. The goal in the bill, it is admittedly high, and I think we are close to getting something that is more feasible, but still achieves the intent of having the electric system planning, work with the cost containment plans towards a goal that we can benchmark against that is a bit more reasonable. And so I just want to ask, I guess, Mr. Burkowski, if you'll continue to work with us till we get these amendments just right. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Senator Carrozza, then Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Hester, thank you for the bill. And we all have some shared goals here. And, I went through the testimony both in support and in opposition. And I picked up that going back to the shared affordability goals. But with you all here testifying that, this, as written presents issues, and we're talking about working through amendments. But I guess I wanted to go a little bit broader with my question. You all are on the front lines and you care about your customers, our constituents. What if we throwing the ball in your court to say, okay, what would you suggest on bringing down ratepayer costs?
Do you want to speak
if this isn't the solution?
Specifically.
Hi, Ethan Holmes, BG&E Strategy. I'm in charge of the development of the 2 battery storage pilots, Chesapeake and Fairhaven. I lead our engagement with the DSP work group and the energy storage work group. And one of the things I see here is some confusion between non-wire solutions and DERs, between system level peaks and local peaks. This, while I applaud Senator Hester's approach in SB 596 to system level peaks, which is the aggregate of all of our peaks across, all of our usage. Many of the pieces of this bill are actually pointing to local peaks, which will not impact that. And I'll give you an example. Our Chesapeake and Fairhaven battery systems are specifically designed to meet the winter peak, morning winter peaks of the Chesapeake Beach community, which does not have gas heat. And so rather than the standard late in the day, hot summer day peak that most of our territory experiences, they have their peaks in the morning. The system peak that this bill proposes to attack is not the one that the technologies listed in the language is actually revolving around. It has involved local peaks, which can be done with non-wire solutions, which is what I do for a living. And we do deploy non-wire solutions, Chesapeake and Fairhaven being two examples. We also have a new proposed project at the Hereford substation. But it's very specific situations are when we can use these types of technologies. For instance, in Chesapeake Beach, it was to avoid the need for 10 miles of underground feeder, which underground is extremely expensive, and to meet a winter peak, which is, again, another unusual situation. The Hereford substation is also being used with 3 megawatts of battery storage to avoid the need for a substation. I've got the list right here. A new transmission supplied at 34 kV low-side substation, almost 5 miles of new 34 kV feeders, a new 34 to 13 kV substation, and several miles of new 13 kV feeders. And one of the reasons it works in that area is because there's a large community solar plant, which provides the generation needed for those batteries, because batteries are a give and take. They draw the energy in, then they dispatch it back out, charge and discharge. Many of the pieces of this bill do not speak to the system peak, which it proposes to address. It speaks to local peaks. We already do that. When we are already attacking the system peaks, though, in many ways, including through the virtual power plant, through the DRIVE Act, which, by the way, I proposed an element called the medical best for our most vulnerable customers who have medical needs. We approach with demand response through the Empower program, which demand response makes up 0.1% of the Empower life cycle goal, but it costs currently 16% of the total Empower surcharge.
Hey, Mr. Holmes, we're going to have to.
Can I just ask one follow-up question?
Okay.
And it's maybe to Ann together.
I'm sorry.
If you could provide to us, I think, just that conversation of system peaks and low peaks and where where there's some progress being made, where the challenges still are. If you could provide that to us. Also, I think I was starting to understand you're taking some measures that would be cost containment if you don't end up doing 10 miles of transmission. I think it would be helpful if we had that as a committee.
We'd be happy to provide that information.
That information. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Watson, did you have any questions? You're good? Okay, additional questions for this panel? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 598, which brings us to our final bill of the day. Senator Hester on Senate Bill 825. And we do have 2 virtual witnesses and 3 in-person witnesses. I'm going to call your sponsor panelists that are here in person, I believe. Chris Hollifield, Michael Centrella, Marcia Deppen. And then we have 2 virtual witnesses you've designated as sponsor panelists, Tom Garant and Troy Stairwell. Are they in the queue? Okay, so there's a total of 5 sponsor panelists, 3 in person and 2 virtual. And those are the extent of the witnesses on the bill. So Senator Hester, we're on Senate Bill 825.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I am still Senator Katie Frey-Hester, here to speak in support of Senate Bill 825, the Public Safety Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. So we'll take a little break from energy and talk about cybersecurity. Sure, you're all excited. Senate Bill 825 establishes the Critical Infrastructure Protection Branch within the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center, and it creates clear statewide measures to protect Maryland's critical infrastructure from both cyber and physical threats. Recent unclassified threat briefings have made clear that modern adversaries seek to disrupt essential services systems rather than rely on traditional physical attacks. So, colleagues, we're talking about things like energy, water, transportation, communication, and food systems. These are now primary targets because disruption can create widespread economic and social instability without a single kinetic strike. Lessons from cyber operations observed in the Ukraine and rising geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific region demonstrate that these threats are no longer hypothetical. Nation-state actors are actively probing U.S. infrastructure networks through persistent low-level intrusions designed to test vulnerabilities and maintain access. As the traditional separation between information technology and operational technology disappears, physical infrastructure is increasingly exposed to foreign cyber intrusion. I have some recent examples for you all. This is the kind of stuff that really keeps me up at night, colleagues. In water and energy, the FBI, NSA, and CISA have warned that Volt Typhoon, a state-sponsored Chinese hacker group, has already compromised the IT environments of multiple energy and water organizations as part of their efforts to pre-position themselves in the United States. In the area of transportation in 2025, the Zeta ransomware group claimed responsibility for breaching Maryland Transit Administration's network and demanded $3.4 million, causing system outages. In telecommunications in late 2024, state-sponsored Chinese hacker group Salt Typhoon infiltrated multiple U.S. telecommunication companies, including internet service providers. In healthcare, the Iranian government-sponsored cyber actors targeted Boston Children's Hospital in a despicable attempt to disrupt patient care. Last year, this committee took really strong action. We strengthened cybersecurity protections for Maryland's water systems when this committee passed Senate Bill 871. However, protecting individual sectors is no longer sufficient. Maryland must adopt a comprehensive statewide strategy that recognizes the interdependence of critical infrastructure systems. During the interim, I participated in Colorado's interlock critical infrastructure briefing, where state leaders described how fragmented oversight limited their preparedness. Colorado responded by creating a whole-of-state partnership, uniting federal agencies, state government, and the National Guard. Their model maintained a centralized infrastructure database. They conduct regular cross-sector exercises, and they validate contingency plans through ongoing coordination. They have also mapped infrastructure independencies, recognizing that a distribution in one system, such as electric power, can cascade their failures across water treatment, health delivery, communications, and transportation networks. After returning to the great state of Maryland, I found that our agencies are doing a lot. They're doing strong work within their missions. However, the state could benefit from a more comprehensive framework integrating federal, state, and local partners. Maryland needs the ability to assess cyber threats across potential physical impacts, understand these critical cross-center dependencies, and coordinate planning and response before a crisis occurs. Senate Bill 825 was developed with the agencies who are here to testify in support: Homeland Security, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, the National Guard. What this bill does is it establishes a critical infrastructure protection branch within the MCAC to coordinate agencies responsible for overseeing critical infrastructure statewide. This branch is charged with 5 things: analyzing potential threats and prioritizing our critical infrastructure assets, strengthening these critical infrastructure assets within the state that are identified as our priority assets, working with the Department of Emergency Management to map the cascading impacts of an attack on critical infrastructure and create response plans, working with the Department of IT to provide up-to-date cybersecurity and reporting standards to the owners of these critical assets, collaborating with MDEM to respond if an attack happens, and coordinating with the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and critical industry, local, and federal partners on issues pertaining to critical infrastructure. Colleagues, Senate Bill 825 ensures Maryland is prepared to confront these evolving national threats. Our critical infrastructure provides essential services, healthcare, communications, and water. Maryland residents and agencies have already experienced the consequence of cyber disruptions, and this legislation positions the state to be proactive rather than reactive. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 825.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hester. Okay, why don't we, anybody want to, any sequence, Senator Hester? Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, why don't you proceed, and you'll be on the up to 2-minute clock, okay? Tell us who you are.
Okay. Chairman Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity today. My name is Chris Hollifield. I'm the CEO for Technology Advancement Center. We're a Maryland-based nonprofit focused on furthering innovation and particular cybersecurity, and more specifically OT cybersecurity, critical infrastructure. I strongly support this bill to establish a critical infrastructure protection branch within the MCAC. This bill addresses growing threats. It shouldn't be lost on anyone. The threat is growing to Maryland's critical infrastructure. This includes energy grids, water system, and transportation. By creating a dedicated branch, we will set the conditions to enhance coordination, threat analysis, and response capabilities against cyber attacks. The urgency of this effort is absolutely clear to me and should be to you. What you just heard from Senator Hester should scare you and keep you up at night. But let's dig just a little bit in just a few seconds I have here on there's many threats, but there's one in particular, and that is with the People's Republic of China. Public statements from U.S. defense and intelligence leadership indicate that the PRC is directed as military to be prepared for a Taiwan contingency by 2027. It's 2026 now. In any future conflict scenario, cyber operations are without a doubt expected to proceed and accompany kinetic activity. U.S. critical infrastructure, including energy, transportation, healthcare, water systems, and defense installations, will be targeted for disruption. Maryland holds particular strategic significance given its concentration of military installations, intelligence assets, defense contractors, and critical infrastructure nodes. This state's resilience is inseparable from national security and vice versa. Establishment of this branch will foster partnerships between state agencies, local governments, and private sector, improving resilience and protecting public safety. It will save costs long-term by preventing disruptions and ensure Maryland leads in infrastructure security. I urge a favorable report.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's go to the next witness.
Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, Senator Hester, and distinguished members of the EEE Committee. My name is Marcia Deppen, and I serve as the Interim Director of the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. I am here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 825, which provides a framework for critical infrastructure protection within the state of Maryland. Critical infrastructure is vital to the fabric of our community. Everyday facilities that house essential services function behind the scenes to support the residents of Maryland. CISA and the NSA have continually warned of foreign threat actors exploiting unpatched or outdated software, compromised internet connection accounts, and weak passwords. The result, stolen, leaked, or encrypted data or systems taken offline. This bill, with the suggested amendments, is extremely helpful in creating an integrated government approach to preparing, protecting, and shielding our critical infrastructure. Defining the roles that each of our agencies play in the event of an attack on our critical infrastructure will bring clarity and consensus to a complex issue. Specifically establishing the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center, Critical Infrastructure Branch, and the Chief Critical Infrastructure Officer assigns ownership of the problem to an entity which already has federal and state coordination. Further identifying the Department of Information Technology as the lead for cybersecurity protection aligns with the recently unveiled state cybersecurity and privacy policy. The Maryland Department of Emergency Management, named to support cascading impacts that such an attack could afford our constituents, aligns with the Consequence Management Operations Plan. I assisted in drafting these amendments in consultation with DUIT, MDEM, and the MCAC to ensure a coordinated approach to critical infrastructure protection and a swift response to threats. For all of these reasons, the Governor's Office of Homeland Security respectfully asks the committee for a favorable report on Senate Bill 825.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Central.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of Senate Bill 825. I also want to thank Senator Hester for her leadership and recognizing the urgency of this issue. My name is Mike Centrella, and I served 25 years in the United States Secret Service, most recently as the Assistant Director of Field Operations, where I oversaw investigations operations across the country and internationally. Today, I serve as the Head of Public Policy for Security Scorecard, where I focus on strengthening public sector and critical infrastructure resiliency. The threat to Maryland's critical infrastructure is not hypothetical. It is persistent, targeted, and accelerating. Across the country, we have seen hospital systems forced to divert patients, school districts shut down for days, local governments locked out of financial systems, and transportation networks disrupted. These attacks are not just an IT problem, they are a public safety crisis, and Maryland is not immune. Our political subdivisions, public utilities, healthcare systems, education institutions are increasingly interconnected and increasingly targeted. Foreign adversaries, criminal syndicates, and ransomware groups are actively probing for weaknesses, not just at the state level, but at the county, municipal, and third-party vendor level. The weakest link, often a small contractor or under-resourced local entity, can become the entry point to a much broader disruption. SB 825 is a necessary step towards closing that gap. Establishing the dedicated critical infrastructure protection branch within MCAC creates a single focal point for identifying, prioritizing, and mitigating risk across sectors. That centralized visibility and coordination is essential to today's threat. The bill enables Maryland to move from reactive response to proactive defense, identifying concentration of risk before adversaries exploit them, prioritizing resources based on real exposure, and strengthening resiliency across the ecosystem. The question before us is not whether Maryland will be faced with significant cyber threat. It is whether it will face them prepared or unprepared. SB 825 positions Maryland to lead the foresight rather than reacting crisis, and I strongly urge its passage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's take our two virtual witnesses who are part of the Senator's sponsor panel. Mr. Stairwell. Sorry. Yes, Mr. Stairwell.
Chairman.
You're going to go next, and you're, again, favorable part of the panel, and you've got up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Feldman, esteemed colleagues, co-chairs. My name is Troy Stairwell. I've been practicing cybersecurity for 25 years. I'm the former Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Wisconsin. I participated in critical infrastructure training with the Secret Service and the FBI in preparation for the Republican National Convention, as well as the 2024 elections. I'm currently a board member for the Center for Critical Infrastructure Security. I've also been a Chief Information Security Officer in financial services with over 20 years of experience in that field. Also in healthcare, providing protection for a children's hospital with 2 hospitals, 95 facilities, a nonprofit in addition. With my esteemed colleagues have shared, I can jump to some real life experiences on this one, is that Volt Typhoon did indeed compromise AT&T and Verizon from a communications perspective in 2024. I know that firsthand. When you look at healthcare, I've given multiple presentations. Code black is a real term that they use now when a hospital is under a cyber attack. What happens when a hospital is experiencing a cyber attack is the equivalent, according to the nurse, when the Boston Marathon explosion happened. Staff cannot access electronic health records. They don't know who got what care or what their treatment plans were, and the staffing does not scale when they can't access it and they have to go back to paper charts. When you talk about water and wastewater, those infrastructures have been successfully compromised. I know personally of ones in Texas, Indiana, New Jersey, and Connecticut that have been compromised. More of those are going to be targeting given current events. When you look at the interdependencies, if our adversaries can shut down water and wastewaters, we cannot cool data centers or power plants, and those will cease to operate. Inversely, if you shut down the power plants, water will stop flowing in most municipalities in about 3.5 to 4 hours. With my firsthand experience, 25 years here, that I would like to testify today in support of Senate Bill 825. If you have any further questions or comments, please let me know. I'm happy to help and add my expertise as necessary.
Okay, thank you, sir. We're going to go to our final witness, Tom Guarenti. Mr. Guarenti, I may have botched up your name, but go on.
You were pretty close. Thank you. Chairman Feldman, Madam Vice President Kagan, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in full support of Senate Bill 825. I am Tom Guarenti, Vice President of External and Government Affairs for ARMIS, the global leader in cyber exposure management and security. And we share the mission that many of you have, which is ensuring that states like Maryland stay ahead of the cyber threats, relying not merely on what worked yesterday, but looking forward to what might happen tomorrow. And some incidents, that simple incidents, but impactful, that we can't ignore include a hack that happened at a casino where data was exfiltrated. And the intrusion point for that hack came through the connected thermometer in the fish tank on the casino floor. In the state of Florida, attackers gained access to a water treatment plant and attempted to increase chemical levels and poison the drinking water supply. And in another one, a corporate network was hacked by way of the HVAC system that was connected. These incidents and many others highlight a growing challenge, and that is that there is the expanded growth of IoT, Internet of Things, and OT devices, operational technology. and how those devices typically sit outside of standard, what we call managed IT devices. That's where the growth is, and that's where attackers are exploiting those vulnerabilities now. Cybersecurity should no longer be just an IT issue. With increased attacks that you've heard about in critical infrastructure, healthcare systems, and other water systems, it's a public safety concern. It should be an emergency preparedness topic and a national security topic. And so today, when we look at what can happen, a cyber attack can lead to confusion, chaos, and in some cases, even loss of lives. So in conclusion, Maryland is moving towards creating a zero trust security framework, and we applaud that movement. And as your Chief Information Security Officer, James Sanders, said, cybersecurity is a team sport. We stand ready to help all of you with organizations like Open Policy Group, Open District Solutions, and many others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to everybody on the panel and for the senator. The sponsor will take questions. Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hester, I want to thank you for this bill, and I wanted to really kind of underscore the importance of this being in MCAC, the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center. And you know, when this was stood up in 2003, this was obviously on the heels of the terrorist attacks on our country. And it really was and has continued to be a model of exactly what you put in your testimony about integrating federal, state, and local partners. And putting the critical infrastructure piece as part of the MCAC mission is exactly where it needs to be. My question for you, and I missed your title. Are you the governor's Homeland Security Director?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I appreciate you being here because to me, it has to be elevated at that level. Just as way of background, when on the heels of that terrorist attack, Maryland did not have really anything in place when it came to Homeland Security. And the model we took was putting a Homeland Security Director who was a direct report to the governor, who had the authority to task across the administration and also had the authority to work with federal and locals. And I know this because I was the Deputy Chief of Staff who worked with the governor's, our first Homeland Security Director, who was Dennis Schrader. So I guess my question to you is, now that we're kind of focusing on including the critical infrastructure protection piece, what do you see, again, at the state level, kind of your role in this, with this being included in the MCAC mission?
Yeah, and Senator Hester was really kind enough to work in collaboration with all of the entities on this bill. And we felt that MCAC was the right place because of its existing infrastructure and because of its existing resources. My role is then to come in and assure that we are working in collaboration, all of us, at the state level, but then also providing guidance to our local partners, making sure that we're receiving and getting intel from our federal partners, and ensuring that that whole umbrella part of critical infrastructure is really tight.
I appreciate that. And one other question for you, since you're going to be the integration this way, but you're also across state government. Do you have the authority to task across state government?
I do, yes.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Kagan.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hester, you have just been such an extraordinary leader on all of these issues, and thank you. Ms. Deppen, you referenced amendments, and they were not in our system, but I did get to take a look. Senator Hester, I'm just curious, because I went down this rabbit hole a little bit through my 911 stuff, and I'm wondering how you made your selections as to what should be included. Because what you've got right now that don't seem to be changed by the amendments are security, national economic security, national public health, safety, and then it also includes hospital or health care security. I started going down the road in terms of elections, our PSAPs, our 911 centers, our water and sewer systems, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and other transportation items. everything needs to be protected and everything is vulnerable. So I wonder, so my first question, I guess, is how did you decide what to include and what to exclude? And related to that, would it make just such a mess of things if we started expanding it? Or do we want to start with just the most critical Homeland Security priorities and then maybe down the road? If you could speak to that, and then I may have a follow-up.
So my understanding is that CISA includes 16 critical infrastructure categories, and they're not actually listed here, but there are these 16, and I don't know if elections is one of them.
Yes.
It is. Maybe you can call.
I mean, we did list the US DHS critical infrastructure in there as the policy, and so I believe that the bill is just listing some examples of those, but it's my understanding that all 16 of those sectors will be regarded with this bill.
That's great and reassuring. Because it wasn't in the bill, I didn't see the list of 16, so that's helpful. I guess the follow-up is this Department of Homeland Security the source or the decision maker that we want to defer to? Would we want to come up with our own list that would not be modified by any particular administration, which can be mercurial, unpredictable?
Fair question, Senator. And at this point, I would say that we should stick with what DHS has because every other state is using it as their model. And then we can revisit this bill at some point if we need to. But I think excluding or creating our own is just going to conflate and confuse things.
One quick follow-up then, Ms. Deppen. Yes. Everyone else is doing it this way. Mm-hmm. Why is that important? Because we'd be setting up our own system, or do we somehow interconnect with the other states? Yeah, so Homeland Security, each state has a Homeland Security person, right, like myself, and so we talk and go and meet, and we talk about how we're handling all of these things, and I think the important part is to be consistent across the states, because any state that isn't making sure that they're hitting all of these sectors is going to be an open, vulnerability for Maryland, and I think it's complex in how interactive all of these internet systems are. The gentleman from ARMIS was talking yes. about operational technology, and that is really one of the biggest concerns that I have right now. Okay, thank you, and thank you for your leadership.
Okay, Senator Hester.
Thank you. Just one final thing. I wanted to give a shout out to Travis Nelson,
yes,
who's sitting behind us. He was the Director of Homeland Security and now has been promoted to the Deputy Chief of Staff. But when I got home from Colorado, he was the first person that I called. And the reason we're all sitting here today is because we agreed that this was a critical issue to address, and that we worked together to come up with this bill to figure out the best way to do it. So thank you, Travis.
Okay, well, thank you on behalf of the whole committee, Travis. I appreciate that. Any final questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing, Senate Bill 825, and the bill hearings for today. Folks, we do need to reconvene in maybe 10 minutes because we need to jam out some votes, okay? So, 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Come back, we'll do some voting, and then we'll be done.